Okay, this is it. People wanted to run this live, so that's what I'm gonna do. I had to update a lot of stuff on this PC because it's been a long time since I did anything with this PC in terms of like live content. So for those wondering, we're going to be watching AMD's press conference at CES, which will be starting in just under 30 minutes. Now I might have to leave early, or I might have to take like a phone call like in the middle of it, or hopefully before it actually starts. But I'm expecting a phone call, so if I have to step away, just know that I'll be back. We should be able to get through this. I can see there's a lot of people watching on the actual AMD page itself, so there's like 3,962 people watching. Now I know, okay, there's Jared's Tech. Jared's Tech is in the AMD chat. Probably a lot of the actual tech media is probably covering this too. I know UFD Tech has his live stream going as well. But in terms of product reveals, I expect them to talk about mobile. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff about laptops. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff about mobile in general. And then they're probably going to reveal the 7800X3D CPU, the Ryzen 7. That might be a thing. And then maybe some other SKUs, like a dual CCD. Although I don't know about that one. That I saw the leaks about that. PC Perspective Podcast is also going to be live tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. UTC. You know, I can't help but think that AMD picked a really weird... They picked a really strange time for this... for this actual live stream. Actually, you know what? I'm trying to make sure my microphone doesn't peak. For this actual live stream. Actually, you know what? I'm trying to make sure my microphone... Okay, it sounds pretty good, so we'll probably leave it like that. Because I'm not using my big Audio-Technica AT2020. That's with the actual live stream PC. I'm using kind of the NAS server computer instead to watch this live. So that's why those of you who watch my live streams might notice like the background behind me looks a little bit different. That's because we're in a different location. And that's the reason why I may not sound the same. Like I might sound different. That's because I'm using just a little Zalman Z1 microphone, or Z3 or whatever they call it. I forgot what the SKU is on this microphone. It's actually a really nice microphone in terms of the audio quality. Like if I hold it like closer to my mouth, it sounds a lot more professional. But yeah. So we'll see how this goes. I kind of think that we're probably going to get hopefully some info on the X3D CPUs, because I think that's probably... I was looking at some polls earlier from WCCF Tech, and I think that probably the biggest one, you know, actually we can just kind of go to it right now while we're waiting. If we just go to WCCF Tech, do they have like a poll here on their site? So basically, like, what announcement or product are you most excited about? Actually, how do I capture cursor? I guess I'll... What happened? What happened to the window? Oh, there it is. That's not what happened. Oh, there it is. Okay, we're back. But what announcement or product are you most excited about for AMD's CES keynote? See, I have a feeling pretty much the majority of people are going to vote for the X3D because, like, okay, mobility is always just kind of there. You kind of expect this to always be talked about. at these sort of events. So I expect them to talk about laptops. Like everyone else, like Asus, Nvidia, all of them have talked about laptops already. AMD's probably just going to follow suit. And then the RDNA 3 desktop GPUs, I mean, if they want to show off like the 7800, the 7800 XT, I guess they could talk about that stuff. But it's not really the flagship, but it is going to be more affordable, so it is worth mentioning. And then there's, RDNA 3 mobility. That'll probably, they might be more likely to talk about RDNA 3 mobility compared to desktop, but I don't know. Technically, I would expect the 7800 XT and those GPUs to show up around March, April timeframe, if I had to guess. But the X3D chip is going to be interesting because I kind of think they could launch a single CCD 3D V-Cache chip earlier than the dual ones. I think the dual ones will come out later in the year, like probably in the summer, if I had to guess. Alex, do you think the 7900 XT idle power and temp issue is a driver issue? It's not a driver issue. It's actually how the card behaves with multi-monitor. So the high idle power only exists when you have multi-monitor paired up with, and the monitors have to have different resolutions, and or they have to have different refresh cycles. So meaning, like, for example, if you have a 144 hertz monitor and a 60 hertz monitor, you're probably going to run into the high idle temp. If you have two 144 hertz monitors, you're most likely going to run into the high idle power. The high idle power doesn't happen if you're using 60 hertz monitors, and it also doesn't happen if you're using a single monitor. This is not new. This has been the behavior for Radeon graphics cards for like 10 years or more. And they've never bothered to change it. I've complained to them multiple times in the past. They never did anything about it. Now that they're actually becoming more popular for some reason, now they're hopefully, because the public is more aware of it, hopefully they'll actually do something about it. You heard of people with the LG. Basically anyone that has high refresh monitors, like 4K monitors, any sort of high refresh like 240 hertz, 144 hertz, 165 hertz, all of those type of monitors are going to cause the graphics card to have higher idle power. The NVIDIA GPUs also have higher idle power, just not nearly as noticeable as AMD's. And I don't know if that's because this time around the multi-chip, the chiplet style of building it changes that. It caps at 100 watt when just browsing Chrome. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's because of the multi-monitor. But if you have one monitor, if you have a single monitor, or if you have like multi-monitors that are only like 60 hertz monitors, you won't actually see the problem. It'll behave normal. I don't know why OBS acts really weird with the mouse. I don't know why it's doing that. That's really weird. It's like shows up. Okay, it's actually not showing up on the stream, but it shows up on my screen. Like the mouse is just like showing up on the screen over and over again. But anyway, for this one, I'm going to vote for the X3D because I assume the X3D is the one that most people are looking forward to seeing, or at least hearing a little bit about. So I'm going to vote for the X3D. Let's see what we get. Oh, and sure enough, the Ryzen 7000 X3D is the most highly anticipated product that hopefully they'll announce. So that's going to be that. If we go back over here, so we're about 15 minutes away. Well, people on the previous stream asked me to do a live stream of this keynote address. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, I'm streaming right now, just so you know. I'm streaming using the Radeon RX 7900 XT. just to kind of show that here if I can. Let's see. There's GPU-Z. Whoops. What happened? It's like way too big. There we go. Well, there's GPU-Z. This is the GPU that is encoding the stream live right now. It is a Radeon RX 7900 XT. Remember, I said that I wasn't done with content on the 7900 XT. Just because I managed to get the Red Devil XTX doesn't mean that I'm done using the XT. So, but here's the XT, and you can see like we are streaming, so it is actually encoding the video, and we're using 94 watts right now. And that is with the multi-monitors. I have a 4K 144 hertz, and I have two additional 1440p 144 hertz monitors. So I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. This is the reference card. This is the reference card. I have the unboxing video, I have the review video, I have the ray tracing review video all on this channel with this very GPU. So you can see right here, CPU is at 37C, GPU is at 46C, hotspot 52C. And this is with it encoding the video using the AMD AMF encoder. We've covered this on some previous streams. I did gameplay footage showing what the video quality looks like. I have further tuned it. I have set YouTube for HLS protocol, so the image quality is a lot better than the average typical stream. But it does show that there have been improvements to the encoder. So there you go. You can see we're on the Wickle driver. We are on the latest driver, December 16th of last year. And you can see, okay, the way, I'll tell you right now, the way you can tell if you're having the high idle power is your memory clock. If your memory clock is constantly running at the maximum of 2485 megahertz, if you are on the reference card like me, that is how you know you have the high idle power. Because you can see my idle power right now is 94 watts or 93 watts. That is the high idle power that everyone's talking about. So that's basically it. If you have a single monitor, the memory clock will downclock all the way down to like as low as like 50 megahertz or something. And then the idle power drops to like, I don't know, 15 watts or something. iGPU on laptops is a game changer. Hope they release desktop counterparts. You're probably, okay, the reason why my temperatures are so good is because I disable 0 RPM. Notice my fans are spinning at 900 RPMs. I disable 0 RPM. 0 RPM with the high idle power is a no-no. That is how you get high idles. So this is the reason why mine always idles. Mine typically always idles in like the 40-something Celsius range. The hotspot is around 50 Celsius, kind of like what you see right here. The simple answer is turn off 0 RPM fan mode. And I think I've slightly tuned the fan profile. Just ever so slightly, I think. Or otherwise, all I did was disable 0 RPM. But that's all you got to do. You don't have to do any undervolting, no overclocking, none of that stuff's necessary. You just turn off 0 RPM, and that's all you got to do. It's that simple. Okay, let's get back to the stream so we don't miss out on anything. Oh, why does it always mess up the scaling? This is the only thing I don't like about OBS when it comes to sharing like the browser and stuff, because you end up having to resize everything. That's really annoying. This is the thing that I like XSplit. XSplit, I think, does a better job when it comes to streaming like non-game stuff, like this, for instance, because OBS is very, I don't know, it requires you to tweak all the stuff every time you want to make a change, and it's really annoying. All right, I gotta take a phone call real quick. I'll be back. All right, let's full screen this. Is it muted? How do you turn that off? How do I turn 0 RPM? You go into Radeon settings. Radeon settings, click on performance, click on tuning, and then click on manual tuning. Let me see if I can actually share that real quick. So see if you guys want to copy my settings. Okay, you guys can see that. This is it. This is where you go to turn off 0 RPM right here. Why does my mouse not show up? That's so weird. This is what I did for my fan profile if you guys want to copy my settings. See, look at that. 900 RPM. 900 RPM is slower than the average case fan, so you'll never hear it. It's still silent. And then basically all I did was I disable 0 RPM right here. That'll make the fan spin all the time. I hate 0 RPM. Even on NVIDIA cards, I wish I could disable 0 RPM, but NVIDIA doesn't let you set custom fan profiles within NVIDIA control panel. So my 3080 Ti would always cook itself. But anyway, this middle knob right here, I just kind of drag it up slightly, ever so slightly in the middle here. And that's basically all I do. And it never goes above 50 if it's idle. Idling is gonna be like 42 Celsius if you're idling and not playing a game. Now obviously my computer is actually doing stuff because we are streaming this content and it's encoding the video using the actual graphics card, so it's not like it's gonna be super cold with this because we are actually doing something with the GPU right now. But that's what I have it set to. And I guess the other thing is if you go to settings, so the other thing too that I want to show is, so if you have the reference card right here in Radeon settings, it will say built by AMD. So all that stuff about people talking about the MBA or the made by AMD cards, those are the ones that will say built by AMD. Even if it's resold through like Sapphire or Power Color, but it's still the reference card, it'll be a built by AMD. If you have an AIB card like the Red Devil, it will say powered by AMD instead of built by AMD. That's how you know, that is how you can differentiate between an AIB partner card and the actual AMD reference card. All right, so let's go back to the actual stream again. And again, I have to resize it because this is how OBS does things. Yeah, so it's a reference card. So yours will say built by AMD. Mine was from Power Color, but it's also made by AMD. I just want to see them talk about the Vcache CPU. I don't care if they talk about the single CCD Ryzen 7 or the dual CCD Ryzen 9. I just want to hear them say something. Just give us something about the X3D Vcache CPUs. Because that's probably the only CPU that I'm going to buy this year. Unless Threadripper makes a triumphant return, there's no reason for me to upgrade my PC, or at least the workstation PC this year. Oh, the subtitles are on. I don't know, maybe I will leave the subtitles on. Think you're gonna get the 5800X 3D from a regular, but not anytime soon? Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the game though, because you can still be gaming at 4K and still be CPU bound. Like any kind of MMO, or like games like Star Citizen. Star Citizen is probably the most CPU bound game that I can think of, and the 5800X 3D is currently the best CPU for Star Citizen. It beats every other CPU, including the new AM5 Ryzen 7000 CPUs and the Intel 13900K. All those CPUs basically get demolished by the 5800X 3 in Star Citizen. I don't know why, but Star Citizen is so poorly optimized that Vcache just hides all the suboptimal programming in that game. Because not even the 4090 can save the stutter struggle that is Star Citizen. It's up to the 5800X 3D to actually fix the stutters. I did a review. I have a review video that shows the RT performance. Oh, you mean how much the X3D would increase RT? Yeah, that's a good question actually. I don't know. It depends on the game. I think it will help somewhat, but the thing is, from what I have tested, I still think that the newer, like for example, the 7700X, like this CPU right here, this is the 7700X, like this is going to be faster. This helps ray tracing better than the X3D in most titles. That's why you'll see people bench with either this for like the 3D Mark ray tracing benchmark. They would probably prefer to use this over the X3D, although it kind of depends. Depends on the game. I do think for gaming though, if we're not talking about the X3D, the single CCD Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 5 tend to have more consistent minimum FPS behavior versus the dual CCD Ryzen 9. Like what I've noticed is the Ryzen 9 tends to give you a higher absolute number, but the Ryzen 5 and the Ryzen 7 give you a better minimum and 1% low number. I think it can. Well, I mean, it can assist with the frame times, but the same can be applied to non-RT titles though. Because I think the reason why a lot of people are hyped about the 3D Vcache on AM5 on the Zen 4 is because you look at how much the 5800X 3D breathed new life into the Zen 3 architecture. And if you look at Zen 4, so Zen 4 non-X3D is already faster than the 5800X 3D, so you can imagine what happens when you put the Vcache on the newer architecture. That's a really good question, Joey. I don't know. There are rumors that they do have a dual CCD Vcache CPU. Now, whether or not they're all going to launch at the same time, I have no idea. I would assume that they'll launch the 7800X3D first, probably around May. So I know there's a lot of people that are hoping that it will launch this month. I think this month is way too early to see anything with Vcache. I don't think that's a realistic expectation to have going into watching this presentation. I really think, realistically, I temper my expectations for May. April at the earliest. So now if AMD comes and says, hey guys, we're going to launch this thing in February, that's going to be amazing news, but I don't expect that. That to me is more unexpected. Reality, I think it's going to be like April, May. And we'll see. Maybe they're going to talk about the release window. I think February is too early. I mean, that might be the absolute earliest, and that'll be surprising. Because you guys got to look at when the 5800 X3 launched. The 5800 X3 was like April or May of last year. So it hasn't even been 12 months since the 5800 X3D. Is it going to be on Dragon Range? I have no idea actually. I don't know. I think for mobile, I don't think it'll be on mobile. And the reason why I don't think it's going to be on mobile is because you got to remember the cache, the 3D cache requires, or it uses more electricity. So if they throw that on mobile, that's going to eat away at the battery life faster. So it kind of depends. Like, I'm just thinking of it based off of how it worked with Zen 3. Who knows with Zen 4, they might be able to put Vcache on a mobile chip and still get better performance. It does kind of make sense because, they can do a single CCD 8-core mobile CPU, still have enough die space to fit integrated graphics on there, and then it's only a matter of whether or not the cooling that goes on a laptop is sufficient enough to handle the extra heat from the Vcache. But I think the Vcache has higher power draw, and then that's going to cause higher heat output. And in a mobile form factor, that's typically not an optimal scenario. So I kind of doubt it. And I really think that when it comes to the ultra performance for stuff like gaming in the gaming market, I think AMD has figured out that Vcache makes a lot of sense in the high-end desktop, or not necessarily high-end desktop, but you guys know what I mean. Like
our world needs us.
Going up against the i9,
all of us,
for example.
To pay attention, to plug in, to commit, to tap into the powerful network of minds, ideas, and possibilities that are gathered right here. Because the stakes are higher than ever. Food insecurity, climate change, access to healthcare. These are the critical issues technology has the power to solve. The kind of tech that is already emerging around us, impacting every industry, every city, and every home. But these aren't just exciting new technologies we're talking about. These are solutions, powerful innovations, and most of all, hope.
I think so. I think Lisa Sue's going to be here.
Might be some of the most important moments of the year. This is a
For 400 would be good.
That,
that would be good. I don't think that's going to be a starting price though. I would expect it to be more closer to 500.
Yes, the tech we'll see at CES.
But we'll see. I mean, because the dual CCD is already in the 500 something range.
To innovate our way to a healthier, more sustainable world.
Sounds like the Unified guy.
Our full attention. Everything we've got. So be ready. Be engaged. Be inspired. Be in it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of the Consumer Technology Association, Gary Shapiro.
Here we go, some other person. It's a CES guy. When she said president, I'm like, okay, it's going to be someone else.
Welcome to CES 2023. I am so happy to see you here today.
Watch, he's going to introduce her. He's going to introduce her.
CES keynote stage, one of the tech world's most visionary leaders, AMD Chair and CEO.
Yep, here we go.
Dr. Lisa Su. Lisa has been a keynoter at CES several times. Most recently joining us here on this stage in Las Vegas in 2019, but also digitally in 2021. Now, since my last conversation with Dr. Su on a keynote stage, our world has changed dramatically. Back in early 2021, first responders and frontline workers were just getting the first vaccine doses, developed, of course, with the help of high-performance...
You guys let me know if the audio is too low or too high.
Cut to today, and what do we see? AMD's technology is powering nearly every product and service, shaping the future.
Do we want to put captions on?
In fact, AMD is supporting advances in scientific research, healthcare, and safe driving, not to mention the gaming equipment and software the brand is known for. Now, none of this would be possible without a leader like Dr. Su. She's actually a real and true immigrant success story, having immigrated to the U.S. from Taiwan at a young age, pioneering new research as a grad student, and making a real impact at Texas Instruments, IBM, and Freescale Semiconductor before joining AMD. She has pushed AMD to diversify and invest in new technologies, helping AMD become the industry leader it is today. More recently, she has served on President Biden's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And in fact, last year, won the International Peace Honor for achievements in high-performance computing, donation of supercomputing power for infectious disease research, and inspiring young people to pursue careers in STEM.
Yeah, she's also on the board of directors for multiple companies.
To share more on her vision for the future of computing, please welcome AMD Chair and CEO, Dr. Lisa Su.
You guys want the subtitles? Or let me turn them off.
This is where the world's most advanced processors meet the world's most important challenges. This is where, together, we advance. Together, we discover stars instead of wishing on them. We use supercomputers to help change the nature of climate change.
You want them off?
We supercharge renewable energy.
Oak wants them off. All right.
Accelerate the pace of discovery. Together, we push limits.
There's still people walking in. Like, what are these people doing? Like, look at this. There's people coming in behind, like in front of the camera.
Some of the world's fastest processing speeds. To work smarter, bridge oceans, and save more than the day. Together, we see power.
Man, someday I want to go to like a CES or an E3. I've always wanted to go to CES or E3.
And AR.
Maybe one day I'll be able to go.
New worlds and create them pixel by pixel. Together, we turn the hardest problems into the greatest possibilities. AMD. Together, we advance.
I want to go to both. and Gamescom and the TGS.
Thank you.
Have a good time.
All right. Woo! Thank you so much, Gary, for that wonderful introduction. And good evening, Las Vegas. How's everyone doing tonight? It's so wonderful to be here. Really want to welcome everyone who's also watching on the Worldcast. And I would say that it's so wonderful to be back here in person this year. I am so honored to be opening CES 2023. Now, we have a lot of new products and a lot of new technologies to show you tonight.
Here we go.
So let's go ahead and get started.
Here we go.
You know, this is truly an incredible time to be in the semiconductor industry. If you think about what the last few years have been, you know, there have been many challenges, but there's also been this incredible surge in demand that stressed all aspects of our supply chain. But one thing is true. The pandemic made it clear that semiconductors are absolutely essential to everything that we do. Virtually every product, every service, every experience in our lives is powered by semiconductors. Whether you're talking about cloud services or how we work, game, and connect, chips have become a critical enabler of everything in our modern life. And with the growth of AI across all of these applications, the technology is becoming even smarter and more sophisticated every single day. Now, at AMD, we're all about pushing the envelope in high performance and adaptive computing, and using technology to create solutions to the world's most important challenges. Tonight, I want to give you just a peek into all of the ways technology is transforming how we do things. We have a truly packed show for you, and I'm really excited to be joined by some of our closest partners to discuss what we're doing across AI, hybrid work, gaming, healthcare, aerospace, and sustainable computing. So let's get started with AI.
Here we go, AI.
AI is truly the most important megatrend for the future of tech. And at its simplest, AI leverages the power of high-performance computing to analyze and interpret massive amounts of data to uncover patterns and make predictions on future outcomes. Now, we're already using AI every day. Think about Siri or Alexa on your smartphone or your smart device, or when you're doing shopping, identifying your shopping preferences online, or creating individualized medical treatments, or even predicting weather patterns and numerous other business applications. The full potential of AI, though, can only be realized when it is available across a range of devices, from intelligent endpoints to the edge to the cloud. And to bring the right level of AI capability to all devices, we need multiple compute engines, and that means CPUs, GPUs, and adaptive accelerators. And we are one of the only companies in the world that have all of these engines. So let me start today with a brand new accelerator that we're bringing into the market. AMD XDNA is a highly configurable AI accelerator that originated from our acquisition of Xilinx. What it does is it actually allows us to scale from PCs to intelligent endpoints,
oh, here we go,
edge
XDNA.
devices, and even into the cloud. And what we've done with this architecture is it's actually very configurable. So you can really configure it for the right application and the right power efficiency. Because of this, we can deploy XDNA broadly across our entire product portfolio. Now, the first use of this architecture in AMD products will be in our Ryzen mobile CPUs for notebooks. So today, I'm very proud to announce the all-new Ryzen 7040 series.
74? Wait, what? What is this? Oh, ultra thin. RDNA 3 graphics.
We always use CES to announce our
4 nanometer Ryzen AI, 15 to 45 watt.
Notebooks. And it's the industry's first mobile x86 processor to integrate a dedicated on-chip AI engine, which we call Ryzen AI. It features up to 8 Zen 4 cores, our latest RDNA 3 graphics, and our new Ryzen AI engine that runs 4 dedicated AI streams simultaneously, delivering up to 12 trillion AI operations per second.
That's kind of like the E-cores in Intel's 13th gen, but it's a little bit different. It's more like an FPGA.
Here is the all-new 7040.
Yeah, when you think about it, that AI portion of it is kind of like the E-cores.
Technology, and it has more than 25 billion
because it will be doing a lot of like background tasks and machine learning functions to figure out user habits. I think that's kind of the purpose of it.
Take good care of it, please.
So it's almost like it can do what the E-cores Plus Thread Director on Windows 11 do.
Significantly faster than both our x86 competition as well as Apple. In CPU-intensive workloads like Cinebench, we're delivering up to 34% more performance for creators. In AI, we outperform the Apple M2 by 20%, while our x86 competition doesn't have an on-chip dedicated AI engine.
Yeah.
And then when you look at gaming, we're more than 20% faster. So let's take a look at some of that performance.
See, Apple is actually the benchmark. Apple's the one you want to compare to in mobile.
A time-lapse video of the
if you're going to talk about AI.
On the right is our top-of-stack Ryzen 7040 CPU, with Apple's best in the middle, and Intel's highest-end ultra-thin chip on the left.
Because the M1 is really good at pattern recognition and using heuristics to get better performance, even though it's so much lower power than the Intel i7. But see, the Ryzen one outperforms it. So basically, it's like taking the power of an
So as the demo
x86
completes for
and
AMD,
adding like
what we see
Apple's
is the
AI
Ryzen
sort of
system is
ASIC.
30% faster than Apple and 45% faster than our x86
Wow,
competition.
45% faster than the typical
performance.
Intel
But it's not
mobile
only
chip.
about performance, it is very much about battery life. So with our 4-nanometer process technology, and frankly, our designers have been spending a tremendous amount of effort trying to optimize power across the entire design. The Ryzen 7040 series will enable more than 30 hours of battery life, which is just simply fantastic.
Yeah, it's the Xilinx. It's the Xilinx acquisition that's allowing this to become a thing.
Now, what I'm most excited about with the new 7040 is actually the Ryzen AI capability. As I said, this is brand new for us to integrate on chip. And what it does is it'll actually open up a whole new set of experiences for our users. Things like more lifelike collaboration experiences with enhanced audio and video. Think about content creation being much more productive, or gaming performance being more real time. And even when you think about security, we can use AI to change the way we monitor security. So there's a lot of excitement in the industry around our Ryzen 7040 series. You're going to hear from some of our partners. But I wanted to make sure that you guys saw that the first Ryzen 7040 notebooks will be available in March, and we will have more than 250 ultra-thin gaming and commercial notebook designs spanning our entire Ryzen 7000 series portfolio on track to launch this year.
So those are coming in March. That's typical of mobile. Mobile usually refreshes in the spring.
Okay, but as you guys know, it's not just about hardware. To truly unlock the full potential of our silicon, we need to have very deep partnerships with our software and our system partners. And so that brings me to our first guest. Microsoft represents our deepest and broadest partnership spanning across hardware, software, and systems, and also across client, edge, and cloud. So let me welcome Microsoft EVP and Chief Product Officer, Panos Panay.
All right, your jacket's pretty rad. It's pretty rad. It's a pretty cool jacket, you have to admit. You got me.
Panos was not supposed to embarrass me in the first 5 seconds.
Panos shows up in like some regular jacket.
I mean, last time we did this, it was digital.
Some regular windbreaker.
It's been ages since I've been in front of a crowd. This is really cool.
It is a pretty good crowd, though, tonight. What do you think?
It's pretty cool, yeah. It's a great crowd. Good energy. Good energy. A lot of familiar faces.
It is fantastic to have you here.
Thank you.
I would say, you heard everything I said about Microsoft as our partner. You guys have an incredible mission for, where technology is going, and our teams have done so much together over the years. So can you talk a little bit about, that collaboration?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's good. And like anchoring on the vision is perfect. Let's start there. Like at Microsoft, we remain just guided by our mission. It's what drives me. It's what drives our teams. The mission to empower every human on the planet, every organization on the planet to achieve more through technology. And I think we do that together. I think Microsoft and AMD have a long history, an incredible history, and a partnership, as a matter of fact, that has an impact in making a difference for people through tech. Now, Lisa, I think more than ever, I feel it's our responsibility to create experiences together. Like you just talked about it, there's so much transformation happening right now.
I don't know. I have a feeling this is going to be another mobile thing.
What people can do with tech, and I can certainly say we're really on that path already.
This is going to be with the AI, integrating the AI accelerator.
S, I'm sure we have some fans in here, ultimately powered by AMD's SoCs.
Xbox fans?
These are products we designed together all the way to the innovation and experiences created across the silicon, Windows 11, including the Pluton security that you've so amazingly brought to market, and we're proud of that. And ultimately, even the work that you do with us on Azure, like it all comes together so beautifully and comes together. I feel like our partnerships continues to grow, and the difference that you're making in the world is pretty awesome.
Well, I really appreciate that, Panos. You just heard me talk about Ryzen 7040,
yep.
And we spend a lot of time when we're together with our teams talking about empowering our customers with new user experiences and the importance of AI. We've really had our teams working on this, really big sprint with bringing Ryzen 7040 to the market. So can you talk a little bit about that and what people can expect?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Let me just start by saying, and you hit it, and AI is the defining technology of our time. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's transforming industries. It's improving our daily lives in many ways. Some of it you see, some of it you don't see. And we are right now, right this moment, at an inflection point. This is where computing from the cloud to the edge is becoming more and more intelligent, more personal, and it's all done by harnessing the power of AI. Lisa, here's a way to think about it. AMD has been at the forefront of compute tech for a very long time and continues to be. I think we're going to see a lot of that today. Driving key innovations, we talked about Xbox, Windows, and Azure. But now AMD is also at the forefront of AI technology with Ryzen, the 7040 series alongside Windows 11. It is our next step in this journey together. I'm pretty pumped about it. We can now run we can run massive models that were required with large GPUs now more efficiently on AMD powered devices.
You've told me every top I put on that chip you're going to use.
I'm going to try.
That's what he said. So can you give us just a little bit of an example?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so look, when you take Ryzen AI, here's the easiest way. It was kind of in your slides, but if you take Windows Studio effects, these are pretty powerful. Now we're living in a time these effects enable us.
Jeez, subscribe. Thanks for the sub.
To be seen, to be heard, to
That's like
participate with
perfect
one another,
timing
really
in the middle of an
unlocking that
AMD.
connection we all crave. It's super important to be able to connect with one another. I mean, just a year ago, we were leveraging our PC screens in such a big way, and we continue to be. And now you bring in portrait blur, you bring in eye contact, you bring in automatic framing, you bring in noise suppression. There are so many different things that AI bring to the forefront. You can't see, but you can feel it. This is so important. So when you're connecting with somebody else, you either have that direct eye contact, that background blur without disappearing into it, which is so important, or the framing that you can see here on Sheila where it auto frames. These experiences, though, they demand
52 CU.
trillions of operations per second, to your point.
Yeah, and that's the
You're
thing.
pushing it.
I mean, the
Here's what's
Xbox
awesome. They can now
Xbox
run
Series
on
X
AMD's
is
AI engine,
technically
not taxing the CPU or
more
GPU,
powerful
while only
than the
consuming
PlayStation
200
5
milliwatts.
if you
What does
just
that
look at the
mean?
hardware
What does that mean?
alone.
Get out of that jargon. It means you get this incredible AI power.
The difference is the
You
PS5
sacrifice
makes
no
up for it by
battery life.
clocking
You
higher.
sacrifice no performance, essentially no performance. In essence, letting you run the powerful natural language models. And what does it translate to? It means I can connect with human beings without anything getting in my way and doing whatever else I want to do on the PC at the same time.
Well, it is absolutely the wave of the future. It's what we believe in. I know that it's what we've spent a lot of time on. Now, we're very excited about Ryzen AI and bringing some of the Windows Studio effects to the market. But Panos, just one more question, because we're here at CES, and everybody wants to know what's next. And our teams spend a lot of time on the future. You spend a lot of time on the future. So
This is the question you're not supposed to ask me.
no. This is. Let's tell the world what some of the future may
I
bring.
think those are for the meetings where we kind of do it in closed door sessions, not with 2,000, 3,000 people in front of us.
There might be a few more online too.
Yeah, it feels different. All right, let me offer this. Here's a thought. I'm a mouse and keyboard person. This is how I started at Microsoft. Take a lot of pride in my heritage in that. But I would say just like the mouse helped reinvent the graphical user interface, it was such an important part. And when the scroll wheel came and what it meant, what pointing meant, things started to transform. I know it's a simple example, but it's meaningful to me. AI is going to reinvent how you do everything on Windows, quite literally. Like these large generative models, think language models, code gen models, image models, these models are so powerful, so delightful, so useful, personal, but they're also very compute intensive. And so we haven't been able to do this before. We have never seen this intense workloads at this scale before, and they're right here. It's going to require an operating system that blurs the line between the cloud and edge, and that's what we're doing right now. And then it takes the right silicon in the right place to deliver the best experience for our customers, because now you can do what you want to be doing at an exponential level. Like nothing stops you from the chip all the way through to the cloud, enabled in great part by what you're doing, Lisa. I think the next generation of these products are going to inspire a ton.
He does have a point though.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Panos.
Okay.
I feel like
Appreciate you so much for
Microsoft
being here. Thank you.
Microsoft did want to do things with the OS, but they've always been limited by the compute performance of the hardware. So now, because hardware is getting so much more powerful and all this AI accelerators, it can enable them to do a lot more innovative things on the software
Now,
side.
while many of us have really been working remotely over the last couple of years, there's a lot more we need to do to make hybrid work and remote work more seamless. Now, according to a recent survey, more than 80% of employees say that they like the flexibility of working from home and it makes them happier. But more than half of those employees also say that their connectivity issues are actually limiting their career. And only 25% of people believe their organizations are really prepared for hybrid work. And when you look at the biggest issues that are limiting productivity, actually, I think every one of us has experienced this, right? You're in a hybrid meeting, you're just getting to the most important part of the discussion, and something happens. Your audio drops, your video freezes, or your laptop runs out of battery. We know that technology can make this much better. And we believe that deep co-engineering at the solution level is really required to make hybrid work frictionless for both users and also IT departments. And so to talk more about how we're approaching this opportunity, let me introduce my next guest, HP President and CEO, Enrique Lores.
Enrique. Oh, this guy. I think I remember this guy from last year.
Enrique, thank you so much for joining us on this very important topic. You know, HP has been a wonderful partner with AMD. We've done so much together. And you've also been really a thought leader on how, hybrid work is evolving. And you've spent a lot of time, talking to customers about it. So what are you hearing?
So first of all, Lisa, thank you for inviting us to participate here. I think what we are experiencing is probably the biggest change in how people work that we are going to see in our lifetime. If we think about how are we engaging now with our teams, how do we motivate them, how do we measure their productivity, is very different from what it was.
I was thinking the same thing, Joey. His suit is shiny.
It's totally changing from what we used to do only.
Can anyone say RTX on? This guy's got RTX on his suit.
A new type of work that is growing. For example, our estimate is that in 5 years from now, 50% of the workforce in the US are going to be
Enrique with his RTX on.
Radical changes that are opening the opportunity for disruptions, for opportunities for innovation, and this is what makes
$5 from Italy.
so attractive and so relevant for all of us. So really excited about the changes that are happening and the opportunities for partnering this is bringing.
I completely agree with you. I think that the changes give us
Is in screen space.
Innovation requires us to really work differently. This is one of the things I really appreciate so much about our relationship, because it really is about how do we co-engineer for some of these new challenges. Can you talk a little bit about how our teams are now working differently together?
Sure. I think there has been a very fundamental change on how the two teams have been working from how we used to work in the past. Now we all start by really identifying what are the user needs we are going after, what are the customer pain points that we are trying to address, and then by putting the two engineering teams together to address and to find the right solutions. And what we have found is that when we put the HP team and the AMD together, and they can really think together about the solutions they're bringing, magic happens. And magic is really what we are after, because this is really what creates innovation and what drives customers.
HP was one of the first ones to adopt Ryzen in the mobile
The
space.
engineering team tells me is they can't actually tell who has which badge on when they're working together. Now, along those lines, you had a very exciting announcement
this is
this
Hewlett
morning
Packard.
on your new Dragonfly Pro
He's
device,
from
which
HP.
is one of the things that we've worked on together with our Ryzen processors. Can you tell us why this is such a big step forward?
Sure, and I think this is a great example of how the two teams together can really deliver wonderful things.
Oh, is that for a second I thought it was Dragon Edge.
And really, this is targeting the freelancer community that I was mentioning before, and it's really designed to address the needs of this new and growing customer segment. For example, we know that for these people, having a long battery life is tremendously important. They work long hours, they want to make sure that they can always access information when they need it, and by working together, we have been able to deliver 40% higher passcode score than the M1 that was the leading product until now. We also know how important it is for these people to get the right type of customer support. They don't work for large organizations like ours, but they need their support that whenever they are having a problem with an application or with their device. We have built a solution, a service in the device that just by clicking a button, they can get that type of support. We also know that now communication has become critical for these customers. So we have built all the technology, HP Presence technology, to make sure they always get the right audio and the right video. So really we have integrated in this solution the right experiences that these customers are going to
Has anyone
deliver.
used an HP Omen laptop?
Excited. It's an amazing product.
Or just
It
an
really
HP
highlights the benefits, as I said,
what
of
was
really
HP
optimizing
Envy
hardware,
or
software, and
I
systems
forget the
together.
other HP brands
Now,
for
can you share a
mobile.
little bit about some of the
I
other
know
products
Omen.
that our teams are
Omen
working
is
on,
HP's
for
gaming
2023?
Sure. I would say
line.
that
Kind of
this
like
product
Alienware is
just the
Dell's.
beginning. And you have heard today about the Ryzen 7000 technologies that Lisa has been announcing. You will be seeing a full portfolio of solutions in the spring that will leverage all these products. And Lisa, you and I have been working together for many, many years now. I have to say that I am really more excited now than I have ever been about the innovation that is going to be coming from both companies in the future. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for all the innovation that your team has brought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enrique. It's been a wonderful partnership.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
What? Which laptop is it? Hyperactive.
All right, now let's move to the world of gaming. Do we have any gamers in the house?
Oh, here we go. This is it. This is it. Name of the channel. Here we go.
So you guys know, at AMD, gaming is actually in our DNA. We love gamers, and we're intensely focused on bringing the best experiences possible to the more than 3 billion gamers around the world, the majority of whom actually play on either PCs or consoles. AMD Ryzen processors and Radeon graphics are at the heart of gaming all over. When you think about gaming PCs from OEMs or DIYers, the PlayStation 5.
She took a slight jab at
Xbox
mobile.
Series X and S,
People who play on
Steam
mobile
Deck,
phones.
consoles, cloud gaming services like Microsoft's xCloud, and we're even bringing high-end gaming to cars with the newest generation of Teslas. In the last few months, we launched our new Ryzen 7000 series CPUs and Radeon RX 7900 series GPUs, which has been really exciting. But we know a growing number of gamers want to game everywhere, and today we have a number of products to talk to you about on both the mobile side and as well as the desktop side. So let's start first with mobile with our Ryzen 7045 CPUs. The Ryzen 7045HX series is our first mobile CPU based on a chiplet design. It's for gamers and creators who want the highest possible performance in a notebook. It combines up to 16 of our high-performance Zen 4 cores with boost speeds up to 5.4 gigahertz and up to 80 megabytes of on-chip memory in 5-nanometer process technology. So let's just take a look at the performance. Our previous generation Ryzen 6900HX series were already phenomenal for 1080p gaming. But what we're doing with the 7945HX is to take that to a different level of performance. What we're seeing is, on average, 24% higher performance
16
across
cores.
a range of popular games. And when you look at content creation and productivity applications, when we compare against our competition, those 16 Zen 4 cores are delivering significantly more performance, more than 50% faster across a wide range of applications that will enable creators to accomplish so much more with this notebook. Now, the 7945X enables a different category of mobile laptops for gaming and content creation, but we're also bringing new mobile gaming GPUs to the market today. The RDNA 3 that we launched in the desktop, we're now launching our first products in laptops with our new Radeon RX 7000 mobile GPUs. And what we're doing here, the first chip in the series, the RX 7000 series for gaming and creator laptops, is the new Radeon 7600M XT. And what we have here is 32 RDNA 3 compute units, 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, and a configurable power that allows us to adjust for the best balance of performance and battery life across a wide range of system designs. So let's take a look at some of the performance here. What we see for these guys in 1080p, the 7600M actually delivers next level performance in its class, with 26% faster frame rates on average compared to the competition. Now, you're going to see these guys in the market very, very soon. So we'll have Ryzen 7945 and Radeon 7600M XT laptops starting in February. And you'll see even more gaming notebooks coming later this year, including some new AMD Advantage notebooks. So to talk more about how we bring some of these products to life, Our next partner is one that has adopted AMD very broadly across their portfolio, and that is Lenovo. So
I knew it. I
welcome
knew it was going to be Lenovo.
VP and President Matt Zielinski to the stage.
Here we go. Legion time. Lenovo Legion right here.
Welcome, Matt. It's so great to see you here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Lisa. And it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you during my favorite week of the year, CES. And honestly, what makes this year even more special is the honor of being here on stage with you, Lisa.
Thank you.
So I'm so excited to have the opportunity.
This guy's
to
suit
share more on
is rendering
our
in
company's
DXR
deeply storied
ray
partnership
tracing. It's
and our
not the
strong shared commitment to
RTX.
Keep this flame burning even brighter.
He's got global illumination set to medium.
Well, we really appreciate the breadth of our partnership with Lenovo. I think we've seen deep collaboration in a lot of products. So can you talk a little bit about some of those products?
Lisa, we've talked a lot about how collaboration is the key to unlocking innovation. And over the years, we've built a deep partnership between Lenovo and AMD that spans from the data center to the workstation and all.
I don't know what's up with all the suits on the presentation so far have been using some form of ray tracing.
Challenge that we can't solve. And at Lenovo, we're focused on a vision of developing and delivering smarter technology for all. And I know how deeply you personally and AMD share in that vision. And our partnership is really built.
Yes,
on a
I've
proud
watched
history
all
of
the
decades of
4070
working together,
Ti reviews.
bringing groundbreaking hardware and tech solutions to the market, and these include the ThinkPad Z series.
ThinkPad Z. I almost got a ThinkPad Z last year, but I ended up getting the one that I did the review on the video on the channel, the ThinkPad P15V.
ThinkStation P620. And that really has been a game changer in accelerating workflows across various industries.
But Lenovo was the first one to roll out Threadripper Pro.
Now, we are in the gaming section. And,
followed by Dell.
I take it Lenovo knows something about gaming. So can you talk about some of the products
Here
that
comes
you
the
have,
Legion.
launching here at CES?
I would love to, Lisa. And in fact, look, since 2017, we've launched Ryzen and our most powerful Lenovo Legion PCs. And as the world's #1 PC company, Lenovo is here to deliver our shared vision to this growing gaming community by providing the best gaming hardware and experiences on the planet. And gaming communities are massive and growing, as you mentioned earlier. And esports, for example, is one of the fastest growing sports in the world. And so tomorrow we'll be unveiling our first Lenovo Legion Pro Series laptops. And they integrate the latest generation of AMD Ryzen 7045 series processors that you just launched, Lisa, to take gaming to the next level. And the new Ryzen 7045 HX series bring fantastic best-in-class processors to gaming laptops. And we really have been tied at the hip on every aspect of our new gaming.
Well, when he says launches tomorrow, I'm not sure if it'll actually be available tomorrow.
In the Legion Pro. So can you share a little bit about what we've done with some of those?
I don't know, man. That's pretty shocking. Available tomorrow?
Realizing the potential of the new Lenovo Legion laptops. And our teams really work together to ensure that the new Legion Pro can fully leverage the new Ryzen 7000 series to max out frames per second.
Is that really tomorrow?
Even further. And the multi-core power and performance we managed to tap from the CPU is truly impressive. And this is going to be the most powerful AMD Ryzen gaming laptop we've ever released. And I can't wait for gamers to experience these new incredible platforms. And Lisa, we also agree that AI is one of the keys.
Oh, unveiling, guys. Unveiling. You won't be able to buy one.
AI really elevates gaming with benefits including
unveiling tomorrow.
Bandwidth, lowering your device's power consumption, and increasing frames per second, and even more than that. And the new Ryzen 7000 series have been a big part of really making all of this happen. And we have AI engineered into our systems that can work alongside AMD Ryzen processors to dynamically tune the CPU for up to a target 5%
No, I think
performance.
tomorrow you'll be able to see them on the show floor, is what he means. You'll be able to see the prototype pre-release edition
that,
at
Legion Pro
CES.
is fantastic. And the other thing is we also realize that this is really just the beginning. So can you talk a little bit more about some of the future and what we should expect from Lenovo and AMD?
Absolutely. Well, as you know, this is just the beginning. And in all, Lenovo is going to have 50 different laptops, desktops, and workstations powered by AMD in 2023. That's a big number. So stay tuned because, as we like to say, we're just getting started.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, lots of systems will be out there, but now let's move into desktops. And I know a few of you may be waiting for some desktop chips, but perhaps, right? Yes? No? Maybe? So one of the biggest recent
Oh, here we go.
in gaming PCs
Here we
has
go.
been our introduction of 3D V-cache memory technology in our Ryzen 5800 X3D CPUs last year. What we did is we used 3D packaging to stack memory on top of CPUs to deliver substantially more performance in gaming. When Ryzen 7 5800 X3D launched, it launched as the world's fastest gaming processor. And tonight, I'm very excited to announce that we are now bringing 3D V-cache technology to our Ryzen 7000 processors. The Ryzen 7 7800 X3D is 8 cores, 16 threads.
Hey, there it is. There it is.
And 104 megabytes of cache, which more than doubles the cache compared to the Ryzen 7700X non-X3D version. And these larger caches are important, especially in gaming. Now let's take a look at some of this performance. The 7800 X3D
I said they
delivers
conveniently
on
left the 8.
15%
They left
more
the 7800 out
5800
for a
X3D
reason.
across popular games. Is that okay? But guys, as great as the 7800 X3D is, I've had a lot of our fans asking me for even higher end options. So for tonight, I'm very happy to announce that we're also bringing 3D V-cache technology to 12 and 16.
Oh boy, here we go. Ryzen 9s.
We've been working hard on this. The Ryzen 9 7950 X3D is our first 16-core Ryzen processor with V-cache technology and our fastest 3D stack chip ever. It features 16 high-performance CPU cores, boost speeds up to 5.7 gigahertz, and a huge 144 megabyte cache. So let's take a look at some of this performance.
Wait, 144 megabytes of L3 cache?
Performance versus the competition. You can see that the 7950 X3D is faster across
Well, there you go.
games, consistently delivering much higher frames per second, which makes this the ultimate processor for gamers and creators. So, when you think about processors, you also need great games. And what I'd like to show you now is one of the most anticipated new games of 2023, Star Wars Jedi Survivor from our friends at Respawn. You know, this title has actually been developed on Ryzen, and it's been optimized for Ryzen processors. So let's take a look at some gameplay footage.
That means this is going to be like CSGO. It's like how CSGO is super good on Ryzen for some reason. Did it say 120 watt TDP? That's another pretty anticipated game, actually, coming out in March.
That looks great, doesn't it? So I'm very excited to announce that we will be bundling the game with our select Ryzen 7000 series CPUs starting later this month.
What?
And when I look at all of these things, what I'm very happy to say is we're going to have an incredible portfolio for you with Ryzen desktop processors. The new 7800, 7900, and 7950 X3D parts will launch in February.
February?
We're also launching new low-power 65-watt Ryzen 7000 processors and an expanded portfolio of entry-level AM5 motherboards that will make Ryzen the best CPU at every price point in the desktop.
It's only 120 watts. Whoa, that is way, that's way earlier than I thought it was going to be.
So let's switch
and
gears
all three of
and
them?
transition to a very different world where tech is making a huge difference. This is the world of adaptive computing.
All three of them are next month? Man, I can't seem to catch a break from new hardware releases.
So last year, we acquired Xilinx, which gave us leadership in a whole new set of technologies and a whole new set of markets. Adaptive computing solutions are
Yeah, but that's
unique
to
in
be
that the
expected,
hardware can
the lower
be
boost
changed and
clocks.
optimized multiple times to perform whichever task you need.
They're probably gonna
chip to be adapted for optimal performance.
They're probably gonna slot in above each normal non-3D.
To add new features.
I'm pretty sure the 3D is gonna be more expensive than the non-3D.
#1 in adaptive computing, with 10 of the top.
Think about how the X3D, the 5800 X3D was more expensive than the 5800X.
Wireless equipment manufacturers, and more than 6,000 different customers across healthcare, aerospace, industrial, and other embedded markets that are using our products. Let's start with healthcare. This is actually something that's very personal.
The top one's probably going to be $700.
Technology should do good, and
what they'll probably do is they'll slash the price slightly on the non-3D by like $50 or something, and then slot the 3D right on top of it.
Expert in this field and one of our deepest healthcare partners, Bob DeSantis, EVP and Chief Product
Mainly because of
Officer at
Intel.
Intuitive Surgical.
Because you guys remember, Intel has 13th gen, but really the only thing that's going to be able to stand up to these is going to be that new KS CPU.
Thank you, Bob. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow, it's exciting to be here. Thank you, Lisa.
I would say that.
But the power consumption, the 3D V-Cache is already hands down going to win on power efficiency alone.
You know what it means to healthcare.
Because that KS, can you imagine how much electricity that KS is going to have to pull?
On a vision that surgery could be improved by leveraging advanced processing and.
I mean, I know I've got the video content here, guys. There it is, Intel i9. I know we're talking about AMD, but I mean, I've done the power consumption comparison between both of the flagships, so pretty much this guy wins.
The surgical platform, the Da Vinci surgical system, is the realization of that vision. And just some numbers to give you a perspective for kind of the scope and the impact that Da Vinci's having. To date, over 11 million patients have benefited from having a surgical procedure performed on the Da Vinci platform. Every day, every 18 seconds, every day right now, somewhere around the globe, a patient is having another Da Vinci procedure. So that means that in our short time here on stage, about another 12 patients will benefit from the Da Vinci surgical platform. To give you a feel for how the platform actually works, I'd like to show you a video, and the video contains some stories from two of our most important customer categories. One, the surgeon, and also the patient, and this patient happens to also be an employee. In the video, we'll see three of our surgical platforms. The first is called single port, because all the instrumentation goes into the body through a single access point about the size of a quarter. The second is called the Ion platform, and the Ion makes no incisions at all. It goes through a natural orifice. This one goes through the mouth, through the trachea. And the last is called multi-port, multiple arms, multiple incisions, small incisions that go into the body, and that right now is really the bulk of our procedures right now. Multi-port does a variety of procedures from the pelvis to the abdomen to the thoracic cavity. So let's take a look at the video.
When you're sitting in the robot, you feel like you have control over all of the technology around you. You've got your hands controlling one thing, your eyes, and your feet yet another.
7900X 3D.
And you apply that technology and say, let's look at what the robot can show me.
One thing that I think they could announce, but I don't know if they will, is the 7800XT GPU. Basically, the GPUs that will slot in underneath the 7900.
My father was a patient. He had a Da Vinci surgery. In my everyday,
because that should launch in March or April time frame. That's when you'd see this. Maybe it's a little bit too early for that. Although the laptops, the vast majority of the laptops are coming out in the spring. So.
Or safer. Ways to bring new vision technologies to the surgeons so that they can see yet more that the naked eye can't see. Giving that surgeon more information to do their job better.
That is truly wonderful. You know, it is great to see how Intuitive is really improving the surgical process and helping the lives of so many patients every day. Can you talk a little bit about how AMD technology participates?
AMD is critical for us. Our engineering teams are focused on developing systems that, again, enable surgeons to obtain better outcomes, improving and sometimes saving lives. AMD's adaptive computing technology is a key component in achieving this for us. We've worked very closely together to integrate your adaptive technology Handling
I don't
multiple
think so.
real-time functions
I don't think so.
concurrently with real-time compute and with low latency is key, which is why we use adaptive
They've
shocks
only
to
talked about
power
mobile.
the precise motion control of the arms, the visualization, processing, and augmentation, and the safety mechanisms of our platform. And when it comes to surgery, and especially robotic surgery, motion control, visualization, and safety mechanisms are essential. Having a multi-generational, scalable, and reusable compute platform helps Intuitive integrate the same parts across multiple product platforms by programming, adapting them to suit our needs.
I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things I found so interesting, Bob, was that Intuitive's technology can also help reduce the time to diagnose disease and really help patients get answers more quickly. So, can you talk a little bit about this?
Absolutely, and I'll use lung cancer as an example. Due to current limitations with diagnosing lung cancer, it can take sometimes months, even years, to get a definitive diagnosis and treatment. Our Ion platform, again, a robotically driven bronchoscopic catheter, enables access deep inside the lung that wasn't previously possible. That helps physicians to get a biopsy and potentially diagnose lung cancer sooner, which can lead to earlier treatment. And as you can see from the graphic, these are 2 patients with a suspicious lung lesion that have gone through 2 different patient journeys. The one with the robotic approach allows a diagnosis and a treatment much sooner. And when it comes to lung cancer, time really matters.
We are so proud of our partnership.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty big deal.
Computing plays.
This is a pretty big deal, what they're talking about, because I've always thought that the medical industry has lagged far behind every other industry when it comes to innovation.
With everything we're doing with our platforms today, we really believe we're at the tip of the iceberg.
And part of it, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, or why I think that is.
Ecosystem and into our platform. We are further developing it, using it to enable surgeons to develop more efficient techniques to provide better, safer surgery.
But this is really good, because I do think that if
before the surgery, during the surgery, interoperatively, the imaging, the planning, the stage, the adjunct of AR,
if you can use technology to find a problem before it can become a really serious, irreversible problem, that's a big deal.
We're truly honored to be your partner.
Thank you.
I mean, we're talking like life-changing scenarios, life-changing outcomes here. So that's actually a pretty good. I didn't expect to see this in this presentation.
Where AMD technology is dramatically improving patient care. Whether it's CT scans or ultrasounds, our adaptive SoCs and FPGAs are used to create high-resolution scans in real time to diagnose medical conditions as early as possible. And tonight, we are announcing new Vitis medical imaging libraries that will make it even easier for medical device manufacturers to offer high-resolution imaging at 1,000 frames per second or more. Now let's hear from another partner who's using our technology, Clarius, to transform access to healthcare in remote areas.
Fernie is a town of 5,000 people. We have limited resources. We don't have CT scan, we don't have diagnostic ultrasound. Sometimes we can't even do an X-ray. Before we started using handheld ultrasound, people would have to travel for diagnostic ultrasound. And in the winter, that was a significant risk.
Clarius is a leader in handheld ultrasound. Our mission is to bring the power of medical imaging in every setting.
Traditional ultrasound systems are expensive, they're not portable, and they're very difficult to use. And we got really excited about creating a solution that's wireless, that's inexpensive, and that's powered by artificial intelligence.
As a physician, we're using technology more and more in our practice, and it's important that we can trust that technology.
When we found out about the AMD Zinc, it was a game changer for us.
The AMD Zinc
Gamers
really helps
Nexus
solve our
just
technical
dropped.
challenges by creating a platform where we can add software, automation, and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I mean,
to bring all
the
those
medical
controls
industry
and
in general,
automations
like,
onto a
it
single
really
platform.
needs.
It's incredibly inspiring to see our devices being used by thousands of users and affecting millions of patients' lives.
But that's a big deal, because if you can leverage technology for the medical industry, that's a really good thing, because that can kind of sidestep or kind of push it along so that it doesn't continue to lag behind so badly.
Those are great stories. And I'd like to talk about another one, which is also a very interesting area. There's a lot of talk these days about the metaverse, whether you're talking about virtual or augmented reality. But what really excites me most are applications that really help make our lives better. And we are seeing some amazing innovation in the operating room. Magic Leap is a true leader in AR and a longtime AMD partner. So to talk more about how AR is advancing healthcare, let me welcome CEO Peggy Johnson to the stage.
Hey, Lisa.
Welcome, Peggy. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so much excitement, a lot of discussion around AR, VR, the metaverse. Talk a little bit about how Magic Leap sees the market.
Yes, it is such an exciting time to be working in this field right now because the progress being made in augmented reality is accelerating. Businesses are beginning to really understand the value this technology can deliver today. And let me start by saying that augmented reality and virtual reality are two very different technologies with very different capabilities and use cases. Virtual reality is great for things like gaming, entertainment, and providing you with a total escape from your physical world. Augmented reality is the merging of your physical world with your digital world. And you still see your physical world as it is, but we merge digital content into your field of view. So with highly immersive augmented reality, like that enabled by Magic Leap 2, that digital content can now become a digital twin of a factory, or 3D visualizations of the data, or even a surgical plan where you can overlay on the patient a guide for the surgeon to operate. So it can also connect you with a remote expert who can guide you through perhaps a complicated procedure and even annotate your physical space from afar, from anywhere in the world, really, using Magic Leap 2 or even a laptop.
Well, it's fascinating technology, and I know we've been working on it together for a number of years. Congratulations on the launch of Magic Leap 2. Can you tell us a little bit more about what makes Magic Leap 2 so special?
Yeah, so a couple things. First is Magic Leap 2's optical stack. That's the thing that enables this industry-leading image quality when you put the headset on. The text legibility is very, very clear. There's a large field of view to put that digital content in front of. And then we have a first-to-market feature called dynamic dimming. That is a capability which allows you to darken the area behind the digital content so it appears even more solid in brightly lit settings, like an operating room. It's really needed in there. And then to power these capabilities,
this is the more the typical stuff that you would expect at CES.
It needed to be capable of driving.
These are more of the typical CES
use cases that our customer needed.
Topics.
And because of AMD's leadership in
like AR, display technology,
with your team
maybe IoT, so Internet of Things.
For Magic Leap 2. And we also developed a custom computer vision and AI processing engine that's been a key component to how
I feel like AI has kind of, the topic of AI has sort of overtaken, or I guess kind of like pushed into where typically they used to talk about like OLEDs and displays, but I'm pretty sure that's going to all be in the normal
Thank you. What I love about
like show
this,
floor.
again, is this is back to the motto of you have to optimize silicon, system, and software together to get the best result. Now, healthcare is clearly one of the most promising areas for AR. So, and I know you're very active in it with lots of partners. So can you talk about how customers are using Magic Leap?
Yeah, and you're right. Today, healthcare probably has some of the most advanced AR use cases, and they actually generate two-day positive outcomes for patients and for doctors. So think of surgical planning and 3D visualizations of MRIs that can help a practitioner get a better understanding of the patient's anatomy before surgery and even guide them through an operation. And we've got a really great partner in Senti-R. They've developed this solution that connects.
I'm going to let this run. I'm going
to
step away
clinical
for a couple
data
minutes.
The images
We're kind of past the big announcements here. Unless there's something that comes at the end of the show.
Physicians have to actually guide a catheter through the blood vessels of the heart. And they do that now while looking at a 2D screen in front of them. But with Senti-AR, the physician is able to see this 3D map of the patient's heart in front of their eyes and the location of the catheter all in real time. So this is absolutely game-changing for the industry, and it's a use case that's really only possible with augmented reality.
No, it's amazing technology, really. So what's next for Magic Leap 2?
Okay, well, I'm excited to announce that we are now what's called 60601 certified, and that means we're approved to take into the operating room. The surgeon can wear it in, and we're currently the only AR device with this certification in place. In fact, the Senti-AR solution is now under that standard review by the FDA, and we hope to see their software on our platform a little bit later this year in the market.
It's fantastic, fantastic. It's clear that there's tremendous potential in healthcare. Now, I know you're also looking at a number of other use cases. What's next for this industry?
So the industry, first, we really need to focus on growing the content ecosystem that sits on top of the platform like Magic Leap 2, and that will bring more and more utility to devices like this. And then we need to make it smaller. We want to have just glasses format at some point, but to do that, we need to offload a lot of the compute to cloud instances like those powered by EPYC CPUs. Pervasive AI will also play a big part by maximizing the value of the data that Magic Leap 2 can process so it can turn into actionable insights for the user. And it goes without saying that all of this will require very close collaboration with the industry.
I think, Peggy, again, our engineers love working with your team because it really is about collaboration and doing something that you might have thought was impossible. So we're very proud to partner with you. Congratulations on Magic Leap 2, and we look forward to making this next era of computing a reality.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, it's not just on our planet where we're seeing the profound impact of high performance and adaptive computing. AMD has also been a trusted partner in aerospace for decades, and we continue to work with the industry that innovates beyond boundaries of our planet. AMD solutions have been part of many recent space missions, from Mars Curiosity and Perseverance to the recently launched Artemis moon mission. We've also been working with commercial partners in adaptive computing for space travel as well as for communications. To hear more about how AMD technology is helping to power the future of space exploration, I'm pleased to welcome a former NASA astronaut and Air Force colonel with more than 180 days in space. She was part of 2 space shuttle missions and led a 6-month expedition to the International Space Station, where she served as the lead robotics and science officer. Please welcome Dr. Katie Coleman to the stage. Katie, it is such an honor to have you with us today. I know that everyone is dying to hear about your experiences. Not many people can say they've been to space. So as someone with more than 24 years of experience in space exploration, can you tell us a little bit about your missions?
Well, as a materials scientist, and Lisa, just thank you for having me here. It's been really amazing for me to learn all the different things that go into what I actually got to do. So as a materials scientist, I was really excited that my very first space shuttle mission was a science mission, and our results actually helped design the International Space Station as an orbiting laboratory. The second mission was led by Colonel Eileen Collins, first woman commander of the space shuttle, and our crew successfully deployed the Chandra X-ray Observatory. This is a telescope that literally everything that any of us know about black holes was revealed by this telescope. And my third mission was my favorite, I have to say, because I got to live on the space station, and I got to work there. And it's a test bed for going to the moon and Mars, and in the weightless environment allows us to do experiments that we literally can't do here on Earth. And it forms not just space exploration, but it's pivotal for improving lives down here on Earth as well.
It's absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, for a long time, we've been working with the space industry, and adaptive computing products like our Xilinx FPGAs play an important part. Can you give us a sense of how this technology is used in space?
Well, so when you asked me to be part of tonight. I, of course, had to do some homework. And it was really fascinating for me to understand more about what a difference adaptive computing can make. I mean, for explorers, it gives them literally a whole new toolbox of tools that can solve many of the challenges that we face at every turn. I mean, space exploration is hard. And by definition is about investigating into the unknown, and it's seldom straightforward, and it's never, ever easy, especially when you put people on board those missions. And so whether it's a planetary probe or a space station or a rover, they take years to design and launch these kinds of missions. And resources are limited. We have to plan the missions with the technology we have at the time. And so it's really imperative that these critical technologies be adaptable. We need to be able to modify instruments and detectors. This was really big for me. I mean, instruments and detectors so that after the mission is launched, then their functions could be changed. We can take advantage of innovation and optimize their functionality. I mean, for example, on the Perseverance Mars rover, adaptive technologies are used to help Perseverance, or Percy, as many call her, it's true, to navigate on the surface of Mars using object recognition and terrain avoidance. And so that same technology is actually used for being able to analyze rock and soil samples. And this is really critical right now at this moment, where Perseverance is collecting these samples, because some of those samples will be actually brought back here to Earth by the Mars Sample Return mission that is upcoming. So it's really important, and it's really invaluable to be able to, adapt both hardware and software as missions evolve.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a special use case to think about how the technology is being used. Now, I love hearing about how our technology is being used. Now, all of us at AMD are extremely excited that we participated in the recent Artemis 1 mission. We had a lot of tech in Artemis, so can you tell us a little bit about why that's so important for the future of space exploration?
First, can I ask, did anybody either see the launch in person or watch it on TV? It was simply amazing to see. I did actually get to see it in person, but this is a test mission, and the Artemis program is designed to return humankind to the moon, not just to work there for a few days, but to stay and to use the lunar surface as a testing ground for sending humans to Mars. Now, Artemis 1 was a test flight of both the Space Launch System and the Orion capsule, and NASA launched the most powerful rocket that we have launched in 50 years to the moon, and the Orion spacecraft returned 26 days later. The next mission will have humans on the moon. I mean, this one tested, I'll say that again. This mission tested integrated systems for launching, for navigation, and for reentry. And the next mission will have humans aboard that spacecraft in preparation for landing on the moon in future missions. So they used adaptive technology for systems like engine controllers, for displays, for command systems. And the Orion capsule had more than 5,000 unique sensors, and that was just on the mannequins inside of the capsule, okay? And so there's really a lot this is helping us understand the effects of the deep space environment on people. And
I think it's amazing, really, if you think about all that we were able to put there, and it's just something that we can't even imagine.
Well, and then these missions are continuing, and unfortunately, it's they're long in between, and that's where the adaptive part, I think, really comes in. Is we don't want to launch with many years ago technology, and so for me, I don't what I think is really amazing about the Artemis missions is that the moon is not just a bright shape in the sky for me anymore. It's a place that we are going. And even the name Artemis is the sister of Apollo. It's very fitting because the first woman and the first person of color will take those first steps on the moon. So, I think Lisa and I both have our hands up. You never know. I'm retired from there now. But these are really exciting times. I mean, you should know that your child or the children of your friends and neighbors could very well someday live on the moon or travel to Mars.
I have to say, Katie, looking at your career and what you've accomplished, I think I'm speaking for everybody in the audience here. You are such a role model and a true inspiration for so many people. Now, I know you're very passionate about STEM education and, how do we bring more people into, these types of environments? Can you just tell us a little bit about, what you think we should be doing as an industry?
Well, the challenges I think that we face in exploration, I mean, they're big and they're hard, and I think they demand courageous and inquisitive young people, younger than probably anybody in this room, that they bring their vision, their ingenuity, and their cross-disciplinary scientific expertise to innovation and to design, and that is why STEM and STEAM are super critical.
I completely agree.
I think we can all help by making sure that all of us tell the stories of our work and our discoveries in ways that compel the next generation to play a part in exploration, whatever kind they choose. I mean, your stories can ignite curiosity, which is fundamental to science and exploration. And just one spark can make a difference. I know it did for me. It never occurred to me to become an astronaut until I was in college. And I went to the same college that Lisa did, a really neat technical school on the banks of the Charles River in Boston. And Dr. Sally Ride, the first American woman astronaut, came and she talked at MIT, and I went to listen to her. And that's when the light bulb really went off for me, which was that she was a person that I could relate to, and she had applied for and qualified for this amazing job. And for me, it really was a revelation to realize that maybe I, too, could try to be qualified for that. And as professionals in STEM fields, I think that we both understand the nature and the number of the challenges that we face. I mean, and due to those, we really cannot leave behind any potential teammates, especially those who think differently than a lot of people on our team already. And I'm actually just certain, Lisa, that if women had walked on the moon 60 years ago, every one of us in this room would have a different horizon today. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so excited about Artemis and those goals becoming a reality. I mean, on these first missions, we may be sending just a few people to the moon, but we'll definitely be changing the world.
Katie, I would say I think you might have inspired a few people tonight. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, and your team, for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so now for our final area of the night, let's turn to how we're bringing sustainable computing to the largest
All right,
data centers
the
in
final
world.
area. Hey, Mr. Eastwood. Hey, guys. Sorry, I had to step away for a little bit.
Every day, billions of people around the world use our EPYC data center CPUs and Instinct accelerators. The leading cloud companies, including Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Oracle, and many more, have all deployed AMD technology in their data centers. And many of the largest enterprises in the world also use AMD technology, including financial services, healthcare, industrial, automotive, and even Formula One. In entertainment, many of you may have seen Avatar, The Way of Water, over the holidays, but what you probably didn't know is that
How did I feel about the 7950X3D? I was surprised that it is coming out next month. I thought it was originally going to launch in April or May.
Let's take a look.
Surprised that it's coming so soon.
Creativity is an iterative process, so the more performance we can get out of our workstations and servers, the more headroom and time the artists have to do.
You didn't like Rise?
We tested all of the technology available.
Man,
to us
I literally wasn't even here
AMD
for the
really
last
came
10
through
minutes
for
or
us.
so.
We
I actually was
the greatest performance
was gone
per watt,
completely.
per kernel,
I was like, the whole time I was hoping. I hope that Lisa Su keeps talking while I'm not there.
received from
So I
artists
guess
and
it
VFX
ran way over what I thought it
was
would
that
be.
they
I thought this
only
presentation was
wanted
going to be an
to
hour.
use the new AMD epics for their shows going forward.
Artists can now see their scene rendered live in front of them, whereas before that would often have to go off and be on a
Got the best announcement since they would have.
Partnership with
announced.
AMD has been exceptional because it's been helping us drive.
Yeah, unless they save it for the very end, but it's not like it's going to be a super dramatic thing to announce at the very end.
Partnerships are critical for the ongoing success.
But I do think the 6800 XT should be in spring, like March or April, is when I expect to see that GPU.
Now, at AMD, our job is to always push the envelope, especially in areas like high-performance computing and AI, where we're focused on meeting the insatiable demand for more compute in the most sustainable fashion. At the center of the modern data center is a high-performance CPU. Last November, we launched our 4th-gen EPYC processor, and it featured up to 96 Zen 4 cores and supports next-generation memory and I/O. 4th-gen EPYC is truly the world's best data center
Okay,
CPU,
this is
with
it.
more than
This is the big
300
one.
world records. It also delivers leadership energy efficiency that translates into the best total cost of ownership. And when you look at the
CXL is kind of like that direct
EPYC is
storage
up to 3
technology.
times faster in cloud, enterprise, and HPC applications, and up to 2.6 times faster in energy efficiency than the highest-end processor from our competition. And this is really critical as data center power consumption becomes a larger portion of the world's energy usage.
See, this is the thing, though. Like I was saying in the previous stream, the data center, the enterprise, the server world, that is where the big cosmic or galactic battle between Intel and AMD actually rages.
If you choose our competition servers, 15 servers would deliver 8,500 spec-int rate performance.
The problem with Intel in the server world is Intel has suffered so many delays. Sapphire Rapids was supposed to launch last year. It still isn't even out yet. Meanwhile, EPYC has been on track for Genoa. So here comes Genoa, and Sapphire Rapids is missing in action.
Broader perspective of what it means for sustainability at the industry scale. Last year, we deployed about 15 million servers worldwide. If you consider the performance and energy efficiency advantages of our 4th-gen EPYC processors, that level, the impact is really profound. If you choose EPYC, you could save 52 billion kilowatt hours of electricity and avoid 26 million tons of CO2 emissions. And to remove this much CO2 from our atmosphere would require 28 million acres of forest. That's actually more than all of the national forest land in the state of California. This is why we spend so much time on energy efficiency at AMD. So now let me move.
Don't forget about Pat Gelsinger. Don't forget about Pat Gelsinger. Intel does exist.
Today we're going to preview AMD's first inference accelerator. This is the AMD Alveo V7.
Before Pat Gelsinger was at Intel, or back at Intel, or I guess CEO of Intel, I had no idea who the CEO of Intel was.
With Ryzen AI, but it's scaled up for use in servers to deliver 400 million AI operations per second. That's 400 trillion AI operations per second. We designed Alveo V7
they already
to
announced
accelerate
it.
multiple AI models.
They already announced it.
Video
It's
analytics,
February next
customer
month
recommendation engines, while delivering just
for the
great
X3D
compute
chips.
efficiency in a small form factor. Let's take a look at some of this performance. In video analytics applications, you need things like object detection,
Which is actually
classification,
surprising,
and video
because I thought it was
quality
going to be in
real
May.
time.
That was my
Alveo
original
V7
estimate.
delivers 70% more street coverage for smart city applications, 72% more hospital
Oh,
bed coverage for
7950
patient
XT.
monitoring,
Oh,
and 80%
GPU?
more checkout lane coverage in a smart retail store than the competition.
I
And all
have
of
no
this
idea.
is within
Not
a
anytime
75-watt
soon.
power envelope. And I'm very pleased to announce
Probably
that we're
the
gonna
end
take
of the year,
pre-orders for the V70 cards
or maybe
today
early next
with
year.
availability this spring. So let me finish off here.
For
by
this year,
talking
you can
about
expect to
the
see
largest computers in
the
world.
high performance and then the
The
mid-range.
supercomputers used for the most advanced scientific research. We are very
So we're going to be
proud of our
getting,
leadership
the
in
next
HPC.
GPU will be the 7800
Today,
XT and the
the world's
7800,
fastest supercomputer
or I
and the
guess they
first
call it
to break the
7700,
Exelon
but
barrier
whatever they do with the
resides
naming
at
scheme.
Oak Ridge National Labs.
And then
It's
after that, it'll be
powered
like
by
the
AMD's
7600
EPYC
XT and those GPUs.
And actually,
Those are the
75%
GPUs that are
of the
coming
world's
this year.
top
There's
20
there's
most
nothing
energy-efficient
from
supercomputers
AMD
are powered by
that's
AMD.
higher end
Now,
than
the next big
what we got
challenge for
last
the
year.
industry, it's about delivering the next step function of improvement.
And I
in
expect
compute
for
performance.
NVIDIA, I
That
expect
is
there to be a
processing even more
4080
data to
Ti,
enable the next
like
generation
in the
of
fall.
HPC and
So
AI.
basically a long time from now, but there
accomplish
should
this,
be
we've been
a
developing
4080
the world's
Ti,
first data center processor that combines a
maybe
CPU and GPU
from NVIDIA.
on
I
a
don't know,
single
because
chip.
we're gonna have to figure out
Our Instinct MI300
how they're gonna cut the
is
die
first
down
chip
between
that
the
brings
4090 and the
together a data
4080.
center CPU, GPU, and memory into a single
If they
integrated
even need to do
design.
that. The thing is,
What
NVIDIA
this
may not
allows
even need
us
to
to
do
do
that
is
because
share
AMD's
system resources
not going to launch
for the
anything
memory and IO,
more
and it
high-end than the
results in a
XTX.
significant increase in performance
At least
and
this
efficiency,
year.
as well as it's much easier to program. MI300 combines
So,
our next
for those
generation
wondering, this
CDNA
here is
3
going to be
GPU
all
architecture
about
that's
mobile
optimized for HPC
and
AI
CPUs.
performance,
So the
as well as
X3D, all the
24 Zen
mobile
4 cores.
CPUs,
And to feed all
and
those
all the
compute
server
engines,
stuff, like what
we
they're talking
added
about right here, Epic,
128
and then
gigabytes
the
of
graphics
HBM
in the professional world. So
And
see, they're
what
talking
we're
about
doing here is
CDNA.
actually
This is
extremely
the
advanced
GPUs
technology. We're
that go
actually
in the
using
actual
3D
servers.
stacking to put multiple
So these are the things for
GPU
like
and
Google
CPU
Cloud.
triplets
This is
on
what
top of
used
the
to
base
power
die,
Google
which
Stadia, or
connects the
what
memory
Stadia
and
would have
processing
upgraded
system.
to if it was still
So let me
around.
show you one more chip tonight.
One more
This is a
chip.
big one, guys.
Oh, that's the MI300? That's a big die.
I am super proud to show you
It's almost as big as the
MI300
palm
for
of her
the very,
hand.
very first time. This is actually the most complex chip we've ever built. It has 9 5-nanometer chiplets that are 3D stacked on top of 4 6-nanometer chiplets with significant HBM surrounding it. And it has more than 146 billion transistors.
Wow. Wow, that's big. 146 billion transistors?
From a performance standpoint, on AI workloads, MI300 delivers 8 times more performance and 5 times better efficiency than our MI250X, which was already powering the world's fastest supercomputer. And let me tell you what this means. MI300 can train much larger AI models faster, at lower costs, and with less power. And just to put this in perspective, over the holidays, there's been a lot of talk about ChatGPT and what you can do with these large language models. What you probably didn't know is that it takes months to train on thousands of GPUs that consume millions of dollars of electricity. MI300 can reduce the time to train these models from months to weeks with dramatically lower energy costs. And more importantly, it can also support much, much larger models that can be used for even more advanced and more powerful AI services in the future. So I'm very happy to say MI300 is currently in the labs and will be sampling to customers shortly. And you can expect
Amazon's going to be buying
MI300
this.
to market in the
Amazon's
second half
definitely
of
going to
this
be buying
year
this
for both HPC and
to
AI
use
solutions.
for their Alexa and how they make it learn how to recognize human speech better and all that kind of stuff. That's
So it's
what
been absolutely
that's
wonderful
one
being here
example.
with
But
you
this
tonight,
will also
but it is
work in a
time
lot
to
of
wrap
other
up.
high compute,
We
supercomputing
showed
sort
you
of
a ton of technology today,
applications.
highlighting everything that we can do with high performance and adaptive computing.
Google's going to buy that
Whether you're
also.
talking about mobile PCs or the best gaming processors or the next generation of AI, the way we look at it is we as an industry have to come together with our partners and with the ecosystem to really solve some of the world's most important challenges. I am so happy and honored to be in this industry. This is the best time to be in semiconductors. It's the best time to be in tech, and I love what we're doing together. Thank you for being such a great audience here in Las Vegas, and thank you to everyone watching online. Have a great night.
Well, I think that they accomplished what everyone was hoping they would announce. Going off of the WCCF Tech poll from earlier, the vast majority of the votes were all talking about the X3D V-Cache. So they announced the V-Cache. It's coming way earlier than I thought, so that's surprising. They will be launching graphics cards throughout the year. And then, of course, most of the focus is going to be on mobile because that's how CES always is. And then if you're curious what else they talk about at CES, not really what AMD talks about, but the, I guess the other things that they would mention would be display technology, like OLED, high refresh rate, curved display, that sort of thing. That's the other sort of stuff that usually shows up at a CES press conference or keynote address. But there's a lot of there was a lot of reviews on the 4070 Ti. Imagine one day you type in, I guess we'll pause that. Type in the kind of movie you want to see into an AI generator and you watch whatever you want. Just think, it's pretty impressive to think how much has changed in the last 10 years? Just the last 10 years alone. If you think back in 2012, 2013, no one was talking about AI the way they do now. People were starting to talk, there were research papers about machine learning around, and I know the idea of making an automated script tool that can recommend things to you, not like search engine, but I'm talking more of troubleshooting a problem or something like that. Those are the sort of things that were happening 10 years ago, and we went from that to now where it's using AI inferencing to help determine if someone has a certain disease or life-threatening illness in its early stages, and AI for things like the smart home applications and that sort of thing. So, Ray, I don't understand what you're talking about. You're saying AMD cards have issues using PCIe cap. What does that mean? What's an AMD? You're saying AMD cards have issues using PCIe capture cards. AMD cards don't use PCIe capture cards. Those are two different things. I can tell you, I use an AverMedia Live Gamer 4K. I've used AverMedia for more than a decade. And I've used a lot of AMD cards, all Radeon cards, and I've never had a single problem ever with any of the AMD GPUs. So I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you tell me the source of where you're reading this stuff? Because this sounds like nonsense, to be honest. I have an Elgato USB capture card, an HD60S, never had a problem with it. I've always used it with AMD cards, like the 5700 XT, Vega 64, and older. I have all videos on my channel showing all that stuff. When I used to stream to Twitch, when I would capture PS4 gameplay footage, when I would stream, for example, Nier Automata back in 2017, or the Tales of Berseria, or even way back when I was actually semi-popular on Twitch, way back, I'm talking 2014, I did a live stream of Dark Souls 2 and Lightning Returns. I was using AMD graphics cards back then. I was using AverMedia capture cards back then. Never had a single problem, so I have no idea what you're talking about. When you say AMD cards had issues, who is saying this and where? Give me a source. Give me a source, because I have no idea what you're talking about. It just sounds like nonsense, to be honest. I mean, I recently did a PC build video showcasing the AverMedia Live Gamer Bolt, which is a Thunderbolt-based capture card, external capture card that can do 4K 60. I've paired it up with my 7900 XTX, and I have absolutely zero problems with it. So it's all unfounded nonsense. It doesn't sound like it's real sources at all. If you can't provide an actual source, then I don't believe it. And I'm talking from my own experience, and I've never had these problems. So whatever you're reading, it sounds unfounded. Alex, face swap every character in the Shining with one's very own. Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty creepy. Backspace. So, but I guess to answer your question, if you're talking about Elgato and AverMedia, it doesn't matter what graphics card you use. The capture card is the capture card. The capture card is supposed to take an external video source and put that and broadcast that into your computer via a viewport. The only thing the graphics card does is display that on the monitor for you to see the footage. It has nothing else to do with the capture card. So it doesn't matter what video card you're using compared to what capture card you're using. So I don't know what you're reading, but it's clear to me that you're getting confused by whatever you're reading, because that's whatever you're reading is complete nonsense. The system requirements on Elgato, okay, who cares? That just means that they didn't test with an AMD card. That doesn't mean that it's not going to work with the AMD card. I'm telling you, I have an Elgato HD60S capture card, and I've always ever used it with an AMD graphics card, and I've never had any problems with it. Similarly, I have multiple AverMedia capture cards dating back to as far back as 2012, which is when I got my very first AverMedia Live Gamer. It was the old school Live Gamer HD, the one that can only do 1080p 30 FPS. Pair that up with a Radeon HD 7970 back in the day, and never had any problems with it. So, and just to compare Elgato, since we're talking about capture cards, it's not so much the graphics card that matters. It's actually the stability of the capture card's firmware and software that matters more. And in my opinion, I am a strong advocate for AverMedia. I will go AverMedia any day over Elgato. Elgato is basically Elgato does a lot of marketing, but for those in the know, AverMedia is far superior. AverMedia has always had way better firmware, and it's just been a way more stable experience using AverMedia over Elgato. Now, with Elgato, now granted, I haven't used Elgato in a long time. The 4K capture cards that I have are only AverMedia. I have 4 different AverMedia capture cards just to show you. So let's look them up. AverMedia Live Gamer Bolt. So let's just go to AverMedia's website. Since we're talking about, well, this is AverMedia shop. I want to go to avermedia.com. So for those who want to know what I recommend for a capture card, this is my go-to. This is the one that I recommend any day over any other capture card. I recommend this over external capture cards. I recommend this over any Elgato capture card. I don't use Elgato capture cards anymore because they tend to have audio desyncing issues, or at least the older ones did. And I don't know how the 4K capture cards perform, but I've never used the 4K Elgato cards. But I have two. I have 2 of these. So I have one that's in the PC that we're streaming on right now, and the other one is in my Ryzen 7 7700X PC. So I have 2 of these, and I can totally vouch for this capture card because this is a really, really good capture card. The other one that I have, and you guys saw I did a video on it, my very first 4K external capture card is the Live Gamer Bolt. This capture card requires Thunderbolt 3 technology. You must have Thunderbolt, and I have done a video showing how to add Thunderbolt to AMD's X670E. I added it to my Aorus Master via the Gigabyte add-in card. But you can add this to some X570 Zen 3 based motherboards, but you have to make sure that you have the Thunderbolt header to enable the control plane signaling. But this is Thunderbolt, and I have it working perfectly fine on AMD. Anytime you guys see me streaming, like for example, the live stream that I did was it yesterday? The live stream where you guys saw me talking about curve optimizer and overclocking, the way you guys were able to see the BIOS was because I ran an HDMI cable out of the AMD Radeon in the in the 7700K gaming test PC into this capture card, and then I was encoding the footage using the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX Red Devil that I did the review on recently. So all this stuff about capture, I don't know what you're reading about capture cards and AMD not working, but it's completely false. It works totally fine. So, but this is really nice because you can use this with a laptop provided you have USB 4 or Thunderbolt. So this is my latest one. This is a 4K 60 capture card. It does also support HDR footage. So that's really nice. So I have one of those. I have two of the 4K, and I also have the Duo, which I use for capturing something like a Nintendo Switch or dual streaming sort of or dual capture footage. I don't know where that is on their site, but it's somewhere here, I guess. I don't know where it's at, but anyway, you guys get the picture. So, when you say AMD card, what are you talking about? You use this with an AMD card. I just explained that I have the video from the 7900 XT going into this AverMedia capture card, and then this AverMedia capture card is connected via Thunderbolt into my AMD desktop computer, and that AMD desktop computer is using the AMD Radeon XTX graphics card to encode the video footage to YouTube. And all of it works totally fine. So, I mean, I can draw it out for you just to show what it looks like. Hold on. How do I gotta switch this over. Well, if I switch that, I gotta do another one here. Okay, maybe that'll work. Whoops. What happened? Oh, I dragged this thing here. Put this in front of this one. There we go. So, just to kind of show how it looks, you have two PCs. PC 1, PC 2. This PC is the streaming PC. This PC is just some PC that you're going to capture video footage of. This could be a gaming PC, it could be whatever, doesn't matter. So this PC in here is using, well, this PC has Ryzen 7 7700X. I did the video on how to build that PC, and it has the Radeon 7900 XT reference card, the one that we are streaming on right now. And then we have the AverMedia capture card, Live Gamer Bolt. So this is how it works. You run at the back of your graphics card, you run an HDMI cable into the capture card. This is HDMI. Then on the capture card, because it's an external capture card, if it was an internal capture card, you would literally just connect the two PCs together. You run the cable from the graphics card into the capture card. The streaming PC is what I'm talking about. You're talking about the streaming PC. Okay. I'm getting there. So here we have the capture card connecting to the PC via USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4. That's the cable that you have to run. Now, if you have an internal capture card, the only difference is instead of it being USB, it's direct into the PCIe slot on the motherboard. So this wouldn't be here. It would just be PCIe. So that connects into PCIe. It's 3.0 for the capture card, but the thing is it's going to be 4.0 X4. This is actually what's on the Gigabyte Aorus Master. This is X670E Aorus Master with 7950X with 7900 XTX. That's what the streaming PC. They are saying that, okay, who is saying this? What are they talking? The requirements for the streaming PC must be NVIDIA. They have no idea what they're talking about. Okay, if you're reading this off of Elgato's website, all that literally means is the guy who works at Elgato, who they basically handed him the capture card and told him, test this with verify that it works. So he probably just put it in the test PC. The test PC happens to have an NVIDIA graphics card because that's what they had on hand. It's probably some ancient GTX 970 or something. And he tested it and it worked. And he's like, okay, I validated that it works. So you can check that off. That, okay, it works with NVIDIA because he tested it with an NVIDIA graphics card. That's all that means. So that doesn't mean that it doesn't work with an AMD graphics card. What that means is that he did not validate that it works with an AMD card. That's most likely what that means. So, but anyway, so that's it. It goes via PCIe, and that goes up to the CPU, and then you're encoding. If you're encoding via X264, that's going to be CPU encoding, or if you're using the GPU encoder like I am, then it just encodes like that, and that's how it works. It works the same if you're recording gameplay footage or if you're actually using that footage from the capture card for streaming. So when you guys saw me showing the BIOS of the test computer, I was showing the BIOS of an Aorus X670 Aorus Elite AX. This is what you guys saw in the previous live stream. It was footage from the BIOS of this guy captured via the Live Gamer Bolt and then streamed to YouTube using this PC. That is how it's set up. And this can be used for gameplay footage. So, okay, to peel this away here for a second, typically what I do with my capture card, and I've already talked about this before, but usually what I stream using the capture card is the PS5. That's how you stream console games, or you capture footage from a console. You use a capture card. And because it's PS5 and it does 4K, that's why I want a 4K capture card, which is what this is. Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even know what the struggle is. Like, is it the quality doesn't look good because they don't know how to optimize the encoder settings, or they set it to like super fast, or there's not enough bit rate? They're trying to stream at like 500, you know, like 500 kilobits or something, or 0.5, you know, whatever it is. Like, I don't know. I mean, I usually don't think too much about it because it's pretty much, you just set it up and it works. Yeah, so they kind of had to though, because remember, I'm not surprised that they cut the frequency. Did they show the frequency boost clock? I didn't catch the slide. They couldn't even stream at all on Discord. See, I don't know about that. I know people that have always been using like AMD cards and they work in Discord just fine. Like, I know someone who still uses a 5700 XT, and he can share his gameplay footage with me in Discord all the time, and I've never had any issues watching his gameplay footage. And that's on a 5700 XT. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Discord... I need to look into how Discord encodes stream footage, because I don't know what Discord does. Like, I don't know if they actually use the GPU, or if they're using some kind of... what do they call it? Display link mirroring or something. It was 5 gigahertz on the 7800 X3D. I mean, that's really fast for X3D, like considering how that compares to the 5800 X3D. The boost was 5.4. See, to me, like, okay. 5 gigahertz is the boost. They lowered the clock speed. Yeah, they have to, because the thing is, you guys have to remember the substrate on the CPU. So if we're looking at it on its side, the Zen chiplet is here. This one's going to be like the I/O die, so it's larger. So if we're looking at it horizontally, they stack the cache on top of it. So this right here, trying to draw it to scale, but this is the extra 3D cache stacked on top of that. that is going to add more heat. And the thing is, all the heat from this, all the heat that's generated from this guy, it's going to have to radiate through the V-cache to get to the cold plate of the heatsink. They didn't even reduce that much on the Ryzen 9 3D lineup. 0.1 reduced on frequency. Yeah, honestly, I wasn't expecting the dual CCD 3D V-cache to be announced so early. That's the one that really surprised me. I thought I assumed they were going to announce the Ryzen 7 7800 like they did. I wasn't expecting there to be a 7950X3D. That caught me off guard. I assumed that was something that they were going to probably show like around Computex in the summer and then launch it like in July or August. So the 3D is acting like a thermal paste. Not really. I mean, it's not a thermal paste. The heat has to go through it. And the thing is, if you clock the CPU faster, it will require more voltage, which translates into more heat. And the thing is, you can't run the cache. The cache cannot handle the same sort of temperatures that the regular cores can handle. It'll become unstable if it gets too hot. That's the reason why it's limited in how fast it can go. So that's the trade-off. The trade-off is you trade clock speed for very fast cache access. If they lock down what you can do with the 7800X 3D, what do you mean? The problem is they lock down what... Oh, yeah. You can't really overclock it. That's true. I mean, they kind of have to for reliability reasons, right? Because if you run too much voltage through the cache, you can potentially just shorten the lifespan of it. Think of it like with the memory, right? Like think of it like how, you know, with DDR5, like when you try to overclock DDR5, especially if you're trying to push DDR5 above 6000, like to 6400 or 6600 or even higher, like the amount of voltage required, it's typically above 1.43 volts. Now I know a lot of people have done 1.5. I personally don't think that 1.5 is safe for DDR5. I think you're going to kill the chip, the memory chips, way too fast by running that kind of voltage. Because I've talked to an engineer from Samsung who works with the DDR5, the R&D group, and I asked him, my question to him was, what is the safe voltage range for DDR5? And this was last summer when DDR5 was still very, very expensive. And the only reason why you'd buy it was if you were trying to put it on Intel's Alder Lake 12th gen, which most people ended up buying DDR4 when they went to 12th gen. So he told me 1.1 to 1.25, he said, is normal. Anything above 1.25 on DDR5 is considered overvolting. And he said if you go above 1.3 or 1.35, then you don't expect it to live as long as if it was running at 1.1 its entire life. So that's the reason why so people talk about like really high DDR5. I don't think it's so. Until you can run DDR5 well above 6,000 megatransfers at 1.35 volts or lower, ideally 1.25 volts, I don't care. I honestly don't care about DDR5 that can clock above 6,000 or 6,400, because 6,400 is kind of where you need 1.4, and from what I've been told internally, 1.4 is not good. if you want your RAM to live long. So unless you put fans on your RAM, because you know how you can actually buy like cooling fans that stick on top of the RAM sticks. Like unless you do that, or you go with active cooling for the memory chips, it's not worth it. It's not worth running the RAM that fast. If you have to push 1.4 or higher voltage through those chips to get them to be stable. So that's why, like, because I might do a video about overclocking RAM, because I know we covered Curve Optimizer on the channel recently, and I think the next thing to look at is memory overclocking. And for that, I may actually look at, I may actually utilize the 13900K for some content there, because the thing with Ryzen, and I think a lot of people who already pay attention to Ryzen, when it comes to DDR5, we already know that Ryzen is in its first generation of its memory controller for DDR5, whereas Intel is in its second generation for the DDR5. So clearly, you would expect the second generation to be better than the first generation, because if you look at 12th gen Alder Lake is worse at being stable at higher speed DDR5 than Ryzen. Ryzen, you can literally set 6,000 and forget about it. Alder Lake, if you try to push 64 gigs at 6,000, you're kind of playing Silicon Lottery again to see whether or not your IMC on the Alder Lake CPU is actually a good one. So, because I have the 12700K, and that thing I cannot run Gear 1 mode with 64 gigabytes of RAM. If I want to run 64 gigs with the 12700K, I am forced to run at Gear 2 mode, which is basically 2T, or what you consider, if you're thinking about it from Ryzen's terminology, that is where you have to set U clock equals 1/2 of the mem clock. That's basically what I have to do on 12th gen Intel to get the RAM to be stable. So that's a letdown. But with 13th gen, it's different. 13th gen, because the IMC is a lot better, I can clock this thing to 6,000 just like Ryzen, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, I don't have RAM that is rated above 6,000, so if I do overclocking content on RAM, it's going to be taking my 6,000 chip, or maybe my 5600 chip, which is Hynix RAM, and seeing how far I can push that. And for that, I'll probably be utilizing this CPU, because this CPU is better at RAM overclocking than Ryzen. And that's just how it is. Like it's a platform limitation with the first generation of Ryzen being on, or I guess the first generation of AM5 being on DDR5. So it'll be interesting to see if the IMC on the X3D chip is improved over the non-X3D. I doubt it, to be honest. I don't think they made any architectural changes other than the fact that they lowered the boost clock and stacked 3D cache on top of it. That's probably the only thing they did. Obviously, the microcode and the firmware is going to be different. What's the highest amount of RAM that Zen 4 can use without doing that decoupling thing? 6,000. 6,000 is as high as it goes with a 1-to-1 ratio. So for those wondering, I guess, I don't know why we're talking about RAM, but we might as well just talk about it. So we'll pivot here. So with Ryzen 7000, the terminology when you're talking about RAM overclocking for DDR5 is U clock equals mem clock, or I guess M clock. This is the 1-to-1 ratio. So for example, if you have DDR5 6000, that means that, remember that it's double data rate, which means that the true clock to the RAM is half of 6,000, which means it's 3,000 megahertz. So when the U clock equals the mem clock is 3,000. We're using 6,000 as the example. So which means the true speed is 3,000. Because remember, this is double data rate, which means this is actually twice this. So this, on the U clock, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, which means it will also be 3,000 on the mem clock. Now, the U clock is in the CPU. The CPU contains the U clock. This is the IMC, the Integrated Memory Controller. That is on the CPU. That is not on the RAM. That is not on the motherboard. A lot of people, for some reason, think that that is a part of the RAM or the motherboard. I don't know why they think it's part of the motherboard. I can understand why they mistakenly think it's in the RAM, but no, it's actually inside the CPU. So that is the IMC. That is the U clock. So when we say U clock equals mem clock is the RAM clock. And that's going to be, in this case, if we're taking 6,000 megahertz DIMMs, that's going to be 3,000 for the M clock. And if you want a 1-to-1 ratio, then this equals this. So at that voltage, well, oh wait. Okay, I'll tell you right now, my free RAM that I got from Micro Center when I bought the 7700X was 6,000, and the timings were 36, 36, 36, I think 89 or 93. It's one of those two, I forget. I'll just say 89 at 1.35 volts. This is my RAM that I have with the Ryzen 7 7700X. Okay, the other thing I'll teach you guys, how to tell if it's Samsung or Hynix. If the first number equals the second and third number, there is a very, very high probability, greater than 95%, that it is Samsung memory. That is how you can tell if it is Samsung memory. If the first number is, for example, 32 or 34, we'll just say 32. If the first number is different than the second and third number, it is SK Hynix memory. That is the easiest way that you can guess if your G-Skill or Corsair or Team Force RAM is Hynix or Samsung. You look at the timings. If the first number is equal to the second number, it's most likely Samsung memory. If it's different from the second number, it is most likely Hynix memory. So I have Samsung memory that can clock at 6,000. I got it for free, 32 gigabytes for free from Micro Center because I bought the Ryzen 7 7700X. You guys saw the build video, so I'm just reiterating it for those who are new to the channel or just tuning in and they're wondering what we're talking about. I've heard DDR5 Hynix A die is best and M die is second place. Is that true? So when you talk about Hynix A die and M die, that sort of thing, you're talking about the high speed memory. You're talking about like 7200. You're talking about like 7200 or possibly, you know, something that kind of speed. Yes, the reason why that is because Hynix has been pushing the envelope in terms of the innovation for high-speed RAM. They are ahead of the curve. They're ahead of Samsung and Micron when it comes to high-speed RAM. So yes, that is a correct statement. But that has nothing to do with Ryzen and Intel. That's just the RAM itself being able to clock at a very high mega transfer rate. So going back to Intel now, since we talked about Ryzen, so this is the terminology for Ryzen's memory. So U clock equals mem clock is the 1-to-1 ratio. So if U clock equals half, or I guess 1/2 of the mem clock. Oh, someone subbed. Hey, thanks for the sub. Welcome to the channel. That means that this will be 1500 megahertz and this will be 3000 megahertz. So does that make sense? Because it's basically, you plug it in, right? It's an equation. It's half of 3000. So this is that 1-to-2 ratio setting. So if you want to push clocks on Ryzen above 6000, you must run the RAM. You must run the U clock, which remember is inside the CPU. The U clock is part of the integrated memory controller. That's its clock. That has to go at half the speed of the mem clock. So if you, for example, if we go with like 6400 RAM, you know, that's like what, 3200. So you have to run that at half of 3200. You can't run it at the full speed. So that's going to be like 1600 megahertz as opposed to that. So the reason why 6000, so here's the reason why 6400 and above it doesn't matter. It's a waste of money on Ryzen. The reason is because of the U clock. Because you got to think about it. If I go with 6400 megahertz RAM, or okay, let's say I go with 7200. Let's say I go with let's say I try to put 7200 megahertz RAM on Ryzen. So what does that mean? That means that the mem clock is going to be what? 3600? That's going to be 3600. That implies yeah, that's like 3600. Right? So that means 1800 megahertz on U clock, 3600 megahertz on mem clock. Right? So this is the reason why very fast RAM above 6000 is a waste. It's a complete waste of money because you have to run the U clock at the half ratio, which means your U clock is running at 1800 megahertz even though your RAM is running at 3600 megahertz. Now keep that in mind. Compare that to 6000 megahertz. At 6000 megahertz, the U clock is running at 3000 megahertz versus 1800 megahertz with 7200 megahertz RAM. That is the reason why there are massive diminishing returns once you go above 6000. Now, the very best binned CPUs that I have seen or heard of, they can run the U clock at around close to 3200 megahertz. That is kind of the absolute limit for the first generation of the Ryzen DDR5 memory controller. That is kind of the limit. So hope that kind of clears that up. So now let's talk about Intel real quick, because there's the exact same stuff except different terminology. So Intel 12 and 13th gen. So this is going to be the 12,000s and 13,000s. So here it's the same thing. Like the only difference is instead of the word U clock and mem clock, Intel uses something called gear 1 and gear 2. Gear 1 is the same, it's the 1-to-1 ratio, just like AMD's U clock equals mem clock. The gear 2 is the 1-to-2 ratio. It's basically U clock equals half mem clock. That's the only difference between AMD and Intel when it comes to the DDR5 memory. In fact, Intel actually uses DDR1 and DDR2, or gear 1 and gear 2 terminology when referring to DDR4, with going as far back as Rocket Lake. I don't know if I assume Comet Lake, the 10th gen, also has that. Although I don't think so. I think Gear 1 and Gear 2 was introduced with Rocket Lake, which was the 11th gen. So actually, I should probably add 11th, 12th, and 13th because all of these are the exact same architecture. A lot of people seem to forget that Alder Lake and Raptor Lake are derived from Rocket Lake. So let that sink in. The most hated CPU architecture, aka Rocket Lake, the one that Gamers Next has called a waste of sand, is actually the underlying foundational architecture of Alder Lake and Raptor Lake. The only difference between Rocket Lake and these two is that Rocket Lake was stuck on the infamous 14 nanometer plus, whereas Alder Lake was actually the node shrink. And that's the reason why Alder Lake performed the way Rocket Lake was supposed to perform with the addition of the E-cores. So a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people seem to forget completely that Intel's 11th gen is the underlying current architecture used for their current 13th gen Raptor Lake. And the only reason why Intel, so I'll tell you guys, like I tested the 12700K. I cannot do 64 gigabytes at 5600 megahertz without being in Gear 2 mode, which means I'm forced to run Alder Lake at the U clock equals half mem clock just to get 5600 megahertz stable at 64 gigabytes of memory. So maybe 32 gigabytes would work, but 64 gigabytes definitely didn't work for me. Now with Raptor Lake 13th gen, it does work. So I can actually run this like out of the box at 5600 and not have any issues. So what is the Silicon Lottery odds? Like 5% gets best. Backspace, that's a really good question. It really just depends. I would say that your odds of getting a better chip go up if you wait longer to purchase the product. Meaning, somebody who goes and buys like a Zen 3 5800X, for example, if someone were to go and buy a 5800X right now, compared to someone who bought it back in 2020 at launch, most likely the one that is available for sale today has a much higher chance of being a golden sample. Meaning, in the beginning, when yields, it makes sense when you think about it from a manufacturing standpoint, right? Like, in the beginning, the yields are going to be lower. It's a new process node. It's not mature yet. So the likelihood of defects is going to be a much higher probability, which means the likelihood that you get a golden chip is much, much lower. Now, over time, the process node matures, learning curves happen, the manufacturing process gets better, more optimized, then the probability that the golden sample is achievable goes up. So, at launch, it's probably somewhere in the odds of like 5%, but, a year later, it's probably like 15%, and maybe 2 years later, it's something more like, maybe 30%, or maybe 1 out of 3 might be a good overclocker, for example. Why has Intel not been able to make a CPU above 8 real cores? It's because of the architecture. So it goes back to Rocket Lake. You got to remember that with Comet Lake, so Comet Lake 10th gen is derived all the way back from Skylake. So Skylake was a quad-core architecture originally. Like, I'm talking about mainstream desktop, because I know there was Skylake X, but that's not the same architecture. So this was the underlying architecture that was the 6th gen. Then there was Cabby, which was a waste of sand also. It was still a 4-core. This is the infamous 7700K that basically got destroyed by 1st gen Ryzen when it came to value for dollar, or core performance per dollar, right? Like, this was still a good gaming CPU at the time, but you can see how today, 4 cores for a gaming CPU is basically trash. So this is 7th gen, and just to give you guys some background, this was 2015, this was 2017, then there was Coffee. I think it's 2 words. This is the 6-core. So Intel finally, basically Ryzen was a big wake-up call. So what they did was they took Skylake and they scaled it up. They started scaling it up as much as they could. So you got 6 cores out of Coffee Lake. That was the famous 8700K. That's the 8th gen. That was 2017 also. Then there was... I don't even remember what this was called. Coffee Lake Plus? This was the famous 9900. The first i9. The first i9 was the first 8-core. So they finally got an 8-core out in 2018. So that was... I don't know what that was. But okay. The bottom line is Broadwell, which was an older architecture. This was the 5th gen from 2014. This was the very... Was it the very first one? Yeah, it was the... Was it the very first one? No. Was it? Yes, this was the node shrink. This was the first 14 nanometer. That was the first 14 nanometer. Then there was 14 nanometer... 14 nanometer. Then there was 14 nanometer plus. Then there was 14 nanometer plus plus. And then 14 nanometer plus plus plus. Then, after this, was Comet Lake. 10th, okay, this was 9th gen. This was 9th gen. 10th gen. 10900. Okay, this was the 10 core. This was the 10 core in 2020. And this was right before Zen 3, and that's the reason why. Okay, this was 14 nanometer plus 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 plus. And yep, that's, wait. You think it was just Coffee Lake V2? Yeah, it was, I don't know. It was just like 8-core Coffee Lake or something. Why has it, okay. So I'm getting to the point. So you guys can see what this is. 14, 14, 14 plus, 14 plus plus, plus plus plus, plus 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 plus. Then guess what came? New architecture. New architecture. 11th gen. Everybody's favorite, one of my favorites, Rocket Lake. The famous 11900K, and everybody knows what this was, an 8-core flagship. They went from a 10-core flagship to an 8-core flagship. So you might ask, why is it an 8-core as the maximum? Because it is a new architecture. New architecture. No more Skylake. Skylake, Cabby Lake, Coffee Lake Plus, and Comet Lake were all the exact same underlying architecture. They all, if you look at them at a microscopic level, they are all the exact same core design, core layout, everything. So, new 11th gen Rocket Lake, 1100K, 8-core. So when they rolled out their new architecture, the reason why it is only 8 cores is because they made really big cores, aka performance cores, to compete with Ryzen's Zen 3. Because what happened? Everybody knows what happened in 2020. In 2017, Zen 1. In 2018, Zen Plus. Okay, wait a minute, hold on. So 2019, okay, notice 2019 conveniently has nothing from Intel. 2019 has nothing from Intel, but what did 2019 have? Zen 2, aka Ryzen 3000 series. And then what happened in 2020? The famous Zen 3, aka Ryzen 5000 launched. And what happened when Ryzen 5000 launched? It was the first time since 2006 that AMD was better than Intel in every objectable metric measurable. Meaning, power consumption, AMD wins. They'll use less power. Single thread, AMD wins. Zen 3 was faster than Comet Lake. Which means gaming performance, AMD wins. Multi-thread performance, AMD wins. Because AMD can go all the way up to 16-core, 32-thread with the 5950X. So that is a big deal. That is where Intel was like, okay guys, we got to get out our new architecture. We need to come back. Let's go. So they launched Rocket Lake, but guess what? The node wasn't ready. The node wasn't ready. So what do we get with Rocket Lake in 2021? Which isn't that long from now. 14 nanometer plus 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 plus. That is the reason why it was a failure. The reason why it was a failure is because it was a new architecture with big beefy cores stuck on a super old process node from 2014. There's your answer. That's why they couldn't go above 8 cores. The node was too old, the cores were too big, and that was it. And we all know what happens. All the reviewers trashed it. Gamers Nexus called it a waste of sand. It was slower. Not only did it lose to Ryzen, it came out after Zen 3, and it was slower than Zen 3. In some cases, it was slower than the 10th gen. Intel, not only did they lose to AMD, they lost to their previous selves. That's the reason why this processor is very famous in my mind, and I'll never forget it. I felt so sorry for it. I went and actually got one. I have an 11700K. I might do some content on it. One thing I like about the box is that the box literally says that it is the official Olympic processor from Tokyo 2021. Maybe it'll sell for a lot on eBay someday as a collector's item or something. Who knows? But anyway, that's Rocket Lake. So I hope that answers the question why they couldn't go above 8 cores. So we all know what happened in 2021. It was because this was such a disaster, they double launched. This was the same sort of disaster that Kaby Lake, not almost the same sort of disaster. Kaby Lake launched in the beginning of 2017. We all know that Zen 1 launched in the same year. It made Kaby Lake look like terrible value. So what ended up happening in the same year, later that year in the fall, they launched the 8700K 6-core in the exact same year. They double launched. Here's a key point. Whenever you see Intel double launch something, when they launch 2 generations within 1 year, that means that whatever AMD is selling at the time is really, really good. That's how you know when AMD's product is really good. When it's so good that it forces Intel to double launch products, that means the competition is really, really good. So we all know what happened in 2021. Alder Lake. Alder Lake showed up like late in 2021. This was 12th gen. How do I say this? It was the first one that introduced the E-cores. This was 12th gen. This had, what was it, like 8 plus 8 on the 12900K. This was 2021. So what am I trying to get at here? What did I just say earlier? Whenever Intel double launches something, it means that AMD's product is really, really good, or it's giving them a headache. So what happened in that year? Double launch. Double launch in 2021. They brought Alder Lake in as fast as possible and rushed it out to get it out there. But they made a really smart move in providing DDR4 backwards compatibility, or compatibility with both DDR5 and DDR4, because we all know that when Alder Lake came out, DDR5 was terribly expensive. It was prohibitively expensive. That was the drawback of trying to rush it out months early, and that's what ended up happening. But this was their 10 nanometer Intel 7. That is the reason why Alder Lake is so good. The reason why Alder Lake was so good is because they finally, after how many years, finally got the node shrink out. That is what made Alder Lake interesting. That and the fact that it had the whole like efficiency core thing. But no one really cares about the efficiency cores, because in the enthusiast arena, like, efficiency cores basically don't do anything. So, especially if you're on Windows 10. Right, aren't the E-cores now equivalent to Skylake cores? They always were Skylake cores. So the thing is, the E-cores were basically like a Skylake core from 2015, essentially. Which is not bad, considering their lower power. But, you know, in some cases you get performance regression when you have the E-cores on, because the scheduler assigns a task, a high priority task by mistake, to an E-core, and the E-core only clocks to like 3-point-something gigahertz versus like 5 gigahertz on a P-core. And so that task ends up being slower, and you get more latency as a result of that. So that's the reason why the E-cores, especially on Windows 10, really don't provide that much of a benefit. So I hope that answers the question why they couldn't get above 8 cores. The reason why they couldn't get above 8 cores was because when they built their new architecture, they were stuck on 14 nanometer and they couldn't scale beyond 8 for their Rocket Lake architecture. And Alder Lake is a derivative of Rocket Lake, and Raptor Lake is also a derivative of Rocket Lake. So we're starting to see this trend with Intel where it's like they'll build an architecture. So the cool thing about this actually can do like 16 E-cores, but again, like the 16 E-cores are really better suited for some sort of production workstation sort of thing. That's the way I look at it. So that was 2022. Again, 10 nanometer. So, but what we're seeing is like with Intel, they develop an architecture and then they keep it for many, many generations. Is what seems to be the trend, right? So this is what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless you want to consider like these two the same thing, then it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 1, 2, 3. Something else is coming soon. Now I could be wrong because who knows? I think like the only reason why this sort of thing happened was because they were forced to be on this node for so long. So that is to say that Meteor Lake might actually be something new. That's 2024 for those wondering. So that's not coming this year. So this is basically like 20. So this year for Intel is basically going to be like 2019 all over again, where they literally have nothing for a year, except some refresh. Because I think there was they launched the 9900KS. The 9900KS was what they launched in 2019. So there you go. 13900KS. Okay, whoop-de-doo, who cares? It's just a golden chip 13900K. So that's basically all that they're gonna do this year. So next year, Meteor Lake, probably, most likely. So who knows what that'll be? That'll probably be a different node. So, but what this means is this could be another Rocket Lake derivative just on a new node, because you have to go further back to understand why they develop one architecture, do a node shrink, then develop a new architecture, then do a node shrink. They used it. That was the TikTok model, and that held true until Skylake. Skylake is where that whole TikTok thing fell apart, because Broadwell was the node shrink. Haswell was the new architecture. Which is 10 years ago now. This was 28 nanometer. So this was the new architecture. This, not Skylake, Broadwell was the node shrink. Broadwell was basically Haswell on 14 nanometer. See? So 28 nanometer with a new architecture shrunk down to 14 nanometer. That's what Broadwell was. So likewise, Rocket Lake was the new architecture on 14 nanometer plus. Alder Lake was the node shrink. Alder Lake is not a new architecture. It is a node shrink of Rocket Lake. They're fundamentally the same. They both use this Gear 1, Gear 2 naming convention. So you can see they're kind of stuck now because they've got the same node, but they're introducing just another iteration. So Raptor Lake is basically Alder Lake Plus. Oh yeah. Good call. It's correct. 22 nanometer. Good call. 22 nanometer. That was 22 nanometer. 28. I get that mixed up because 28 nanometer was the GPU node for NVIDIA and AMD at the time, and AMD and NVIDIA got stuck on 28 nanometer, similarly to Intel getting stuck on 14 nanometer, but not nearly as long. So that's Intel in a nutshell. So AMD, like, AMD hasn't really had that problem, and the reason why AMD doesn't have that problem is because AMD doesn't actually manufacture their CPUs. They rely on TSMC, same thing as NVIDIA, and that's the reason why they just don't have this problem of having to rehash the same story over and over every year. Like, this is kind of all the same stuff. So I hope that answers the question why Intel can't go beyond 8 cores. I think the thing that will scare Intel the most from AMD, because I do think that the thing that I will say about Raptor Lake, the nice thing about Raptor Lake compared to Alder Lake is the E-cores on Raptor Lake clock much higher than the E-cores did on Alder Lake. And I think that's the reason why Raptor Lake shows much higher gains in multi-threaded workloads than Alder Lake. And also, they've refined the node. This goes back to that question earlier about, like, yields and are golden samples only like 5%. Well, this further proves that scenario, or proves what I was saying earlier, where as a node matures and it gets better, you get better yields. So remember, Raptor Lake is literally Alder Lake plus. But why is Raptor Lake better than Alder Lake when it's the same thing? Well, because the yields are better, therefore you can clock the CPU higher, and you can do stuff like put more E-cores on there. So that's the reason why Raptor Lake is somewhat interesting compared to Alder Lake. I will say that out of all of Intel's architectures, all of this stuff is extremely boring. Well, not Zen, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like, all Intel has been very, very boring until Rocket Lake. Even though Rocket Lake was considered a waste of sand, Rocket Lake was unique because it was the very first new architecture from Intel in a very long time. You know, it basically six, almost 7 years to get a new architecture out of Intel. So that shows you how long they were kind of like rehashing the same stuff over and over again. Whereas AMD, you know, Zen 1, Zen 2, Zen 3, they're all very different from each other. Zen 1 introduced the new architecture. Zen 2 is different because Zen 2 introduced chiplets. Zen 3 is different because Zen 3 combined the CCX into a CCD, and they put way more cache in the L3 level, and that's what made the gaming performance on Zen 3 vastly superior to Intel at the time. So, and then Zen 4 is also different because Zen 4 brings in DDR5 controllers. It brings in, it's a new node shrink, so it's different. Intel must have just thought AMD was dead before Zen 1. Well, you got to remember, like, AMD was supposed to go bankrupt in 2019. Like, AMD literally was supposed to go bankrupt. They were supposed to file for chapter whatever bankruptcy in 2019, or by 2019. And then the fact that, so they launched Zen, and Zen recovered them somewhat enough so they didn't have to go bankrupt. And then they launched Zen 2 in 2019, which was, funnily enough, the year they were supposed to file for bankruptcy, and that further saved them. And then they launched Zen 3, and that literally fully turned the ship around. So, and here they are today. So, yeah, AMD didn't really have anything either. Like, AMD, I guess we're done with this stuff, so I'll go ahead and delete this right here so we can just draw the AMD one. But AMD was basically, what? Phenom 2 X6. They had a 6-core in 2010. And this was 45 nanometer. Then they had FX 8150. This was the bulldozer that everybody talks about. This was what they called an 8-core. We all know, like, this is really more like a 4-core, 8-thread sort of CPU. But this was 2011, and this was 32 nanometer planar. Then they did FX 8350, the famous FX 8350 that Steve from Gamers Nexus still uses at home. He always, every so often, he'll mention that he still runs an FX 8350 at home. I had one of these. I have YouTube videos way back in 2012 showing Guild Wars 2 performance with this against an Intel Core i5. You know, so this CPU is probably the most famous AMD CPU because this one was the pile driver. This was the one that kind of kept AMD afloat for years because it was like the only thing they had. This was 2012. It was still 32 nanometer. Maybe I'll do like a retro video someday about that because I still have my Crosshair 5 Formula Z motherboard. I still got it somewhere, and I still have the CPU. But that was it. This was the pinnacle of gaming desktops that you could get on AMD, basically for a very, very long time. Because after that, in terms of like enthusiast stuff, there was literally nothing. They launched Kaveri, some APUs. You know, they did some. I don't know what they did. They did Excavator, but no one really cared. You don't get why they went from, because FM1 wasn't meant to be an enthusiast desktop. FM1 was more of like budget line desktop that could potentially scale to mobile platforms. That's what FM1 was. It had nothing to do with consumer desktop. That's the reason why. So they didn't go from AM3 to FM1 because if you ever look at AMD's roadmaps from that time when they were launching like Kaveri APUs, if you look at the roadmap, they'll have like the high-end stuff at the top, and then they'll have like this other stuff that they were introducing, and like FX A350 AM3 Plus was like up there, and they just would drag the bar every year. They just drag the bar over, and then they would just like add their newer FM1, FM2 stuff, FM2 Plus, like on the mainstream, budget line stuff. So they didn't really have anything because that was like 2012. So it wasn't until Ryzen. It wasn't until Ryzen Zen 1 in 2017 on 14 nanometer global foundries of all things that they came back. So that was when they came back, and that was when I got my Crosshair 6 Hero, the X370. So that's what happened there. So you guys, if you line this up with Intel, you will see that, right around here in this time frame, there wasn't really anything like right here. It was all just rehashes, Intel was doing like 14 nanometer and stuff. They did one node shrink and then they were stuck. And they continued to be stuck for a number of years until 2021. Until 2021. That's crazy. That was like almost 2 years ago. But yeah, that's where it changed. Because what was it, like Zen? They did Zen Plus. Zen Plus was 2018, and that was 12 nanometer, I think. Then there was, or was that? Yeah, I think that was. Then Zen 2 in 2019. And that was, what was that? Was that 7? Was that 7 nanometer? And then Zen 3, was that all, or was that 7 nanometer? I can't remember. I think this was also 7 nanometer. Yeah, I think this was a node shrink and the new architecture from the original Zen. This is the one that introduced the chiplets and it went to 7 nanometer. Yeah, and then this one was the new. This is the one where they came up with a CCD. They basically combined the CCX and they got rid of the fact that you had to like crosstalk over the I/O die. They basically made it so that it had that big L3 cache, and that's what made them win in gaming and in single thread. And then this was last year. And this was 5 nanometer. So yeah, that's basically how it played out for AMD. So the reason why I'm able to predict when things will launch is just because of patterns. It just simply comes down to patterns. Like now that we have a pattern, you can kind of guess what the roadmap looks like internally and figure, okay, the middle of 2019 to the end of 2020 was the difference between Zen 2 and Zen 3. So that's like a year and a half, roughly. So if we extrapolate that same thing, you know, Zen 5, if we want to guess Zen 5, that's probably going to be 2024. It's probably going to be the middle of 2024. I'm going to think about that for a second. Yeah. Summer 2024 is probably going to be Zen 5. If I had to guess. So that's still a ways out from now. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. And that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because if you look at the early 2000s, well, no, things changed a lot in the early 2000s. If you look at the 2000s, it's like the previous decade, like before 2010, node shrinks were way more common. Like, node shrinks always happened. Moore's Law basically kept happening like normal. But when you look at the difference in how compute power has gone up exponentially in the last 10 years, yes, that's something to marvel at. Like, if you compare, for instance, a Phenom from 2010 to, you know, Zen 3 from 2020, that's a world of difference between those two processors. Like, you can even compare 6-core to 6-core. You can take a Phenom 2 6-core, put that up against a Ryzen 5 5600X. The 5600X will demolish the Phenom 2. Same thing with Intel. Like, if you take Intel's Nehalem or Gulftown, whatever that one was in 2010, and you compare that to even Rocket Lake, if you compare, like, or even just Comet Lake, like if you compare Intel's Nehalem to Comet Lake, the 10-core in 2020, the 10900K will demolish the old Gulftown i7. What was it? The i7 980X or 990X or whatever it was called back then. The 6-core that had triple channel memory. Although that's not really a valid comparison, because that's more like a Threadripper competitor. So I guess something like an i7 2700K. You know, all those people who kept saying, "Oh, I don't need to upgrade because I'm still on Sandy Bridge and Sandy Bridge is still good." I mean, I hate to burst their bubble, but Sandy Bridge is not good. Like, Sandy Bridge, by today's standards, Sandy Bridge is terrible. So, maybe in another lifetime it would have been good, but no. Like, we're way beyond the days when Sandy Bridge was actually good. Because I know there's a lot of people that swear by their i7 2600K or their i5 2500K that it's still good. I can still get more life at it. No. Even Zen 1 like trounced that CPU by miles, and that was like years ago. If I have the wits to have bought some AMD stock in 2016 and sold them in 2021, that would have been sweet. Yeah. AMD stock in 2016, man. Or even like early 2017. Like when if you would have bought AMD stock right when Intel launched the 7th gen Kaby Lake, the i7 7700K, oh man. But those X3D chips, I think they're going to be expensive. If I have to guess at the price, I'm going to go ahead and guess at the price. So the 7950 X3D, the 70, what did they say? The 7950 and this there was 3 of them. They announced this one also, I think, and then this one. So there was the 7 and there was like 2 9s. So this one is going to be at least $700. At least. It could be $800. But it depends on a couple of things. One of the things that will determine this CPU's price is whether or not they decide to make the price adjustment to Zen 4 permanent. The other equation there is going to be the KS from Intel. So the KS could potentially push the price of this down a little bit, but not that much, because I do think in multi-threaded workloads, the KS is probably going to win because the KS will clock much higher. But in gaming, I think in general, the 3D is going to be faster than the KS. But in multi-thread workloads, the Intel chip is probably going to be faster. So Intel will probably price the KS at $700 also. So they could end up selling for the same amount of money. So this one, I gotta think. So the non-3D is $549 MSRP, but they've been doing, I don't know, they've adjusted the price on it to some number that's like 400 something, 443 or something like that. If they do that, they could just price this at like $579 or something. I don't know. I'm just gonna throw some random number out there like that. And then this one is probably gonna be like 450. 450 or 470, somewhere around that range is my guess. Like that's what I think these are gonna be priced at. Somewhere there, you know, like not 89, 79, something like that. Somewhere in this price range. This could even be $749. In fact, it could be that high. Like this will depend on whether or not like what Intel decides to do. Because I think the thing is, if Intel prices the KS at like $650, that thing will probably beat the X3D in multi-thread, just because it's 16 E cores plus 8 P cores plus the hyper-threading on the P cores. So, you know, it still ends up being the same thread count. It's basically like the 13900K versus the 7950X all over again. The only difference is now Intel no longer has the single core advantage or the single thread advantage. They have the multi-thread advantage though. Do I have the KS? No. When is the KS out? No. This is the 13900K. I just use it as a prop, the box. So I've got the 13900K. I've got the 7950X box right here, and then I have the 7700X box. I use these for illustrative. It's kind of like a prop, like, you know, to illustrate a point. Like Vcache would be like this, but Vcache can also be this. And then we all know that Intel's going to launch KS, so these are kind of like the props that I use. I just use like the boxes or whatever. The 3D has a unique market position. I don't know if anything Intel does will move the price of the 3D chips. You know, that's a good point, but I do think you have to also kind of look at it like, how does the 3D Vcache compare to AMD's existing lineup? Because yes, they're going to be faster in gaming, but how are they going to perform in productivity? Because, you know, for a gaming PC, yeah, definitely the 3D Vcache is going to be the top choice. But I think if you're trying to build a computer that's more well-rounded, so to speak, then I think there still might be a case to be made for the non-Vcache regular Zen 4 CPUs. Because they're going to clock higher, so in multi-thread workloads, they might actually do better. But it could also be like a per application basis. Like some of those applications might actually benefit from Vcache, others won't. And they might benefit from higher clock speeds. So that's why I think like it's not like AMD's cannibalizing their sales. So yeah, it is kind of a unique market position. But I do think that they can command a premium because the Vcache is it's kind of like a premier technology, right? Like it's something that's more innovative than the average CPU design. Does AMD hold unique 3D stacking tech advantage to Intel? Yes, but I think Intel has also been working on their own 3D designs. The thing with Intel is if Intel's going to go with 3D, Intel's probably going to drop the E-cores. They're probably going to go back to traditional cores like with Comet Lake and Skylake, and forget about E-cores, because those never really made much sense on prosumer desktop anyway. They make sense in mobile, but they don't make any sense in consumer desktop. Because think about it. If your computer is plugged into the wall and you don't care about battery life, why do you need E-cores? Like, what do they actually do? Like, they don't help in gaming. We know that. They don't help in single-threaded performance. In fact, oftentimes, if you're measuring single-thread, they can cause performance regressions. So I don't know. If Intel does go the 3D stacked approach, which I'm pretty sure they're evaluating in their R&D, I'm pretty sure Intel has done designs on 3D. AMD is not the only one that's doing Vcache. The only reason why Intel hasn't released any Vcache sort of CPUs is because they're rehashing the Rocket Lake architecture. Who knows? Like, Intel's new architecture that replaces Rocket Lake might be a Vcache design, and maybe they carry over E-cores, or maybe there's less E-cores, or maybe they just drop the E-cores altogether, because they end up being a waste of power and a waste of space. I don't know. Felipe, I have no idea. I have no idea if Meteor Lake is going to have no E-cores, or if they're going to use E-cores, or whatever they're going to do with that. I don't know. All I know is that Meteor Lake is coming in 2024, and I know that it is going to be on a different node that is not 10 nanometer, but I do not know if Meteor Lake is an entirely brand new architecture, or if it is just another derivative of Rocket Lake, but it is on a node shrink. Part of me wants to say that it's going to be a new architecture, but typically with Intel, if they introduce a new architecture, they usually reuse the same node first, and then they on the revised edition, they usually do the node shrink. Case in point, you've seen this many times in the past. So Haswell, like I said earlier, is a new architecture on 22 nanometer. Then they introduced what is essentially Haswell Plus. It is the revised Haswell, and they did it on the node shrink. Then they introduced a brand new architecture with Skylake, but they kept it on the exact same node. And then with the new architecture, they introduced Rocket Lake, which was a new architecture to replace Skylake, and that was on the same node. So it wasn't until the revised edition of Rocket Lake where they actually went to a new node. So if Meteor Lake is going to be on a new node, like, for instance, 7 nanometer, or whatever they call it, Intel 7 or whatever. We'll just say, like, if it's let's just say 8 nanometer. It's just some number, right? Like, if Meteor Lake is on 8 nanometer, I wouldn't be surprised if it is nothing more than another Rocket Lake derivative just on a new node. If Meteor Lake is on 10 nanometer, so if it's still going to be on 10 nanometer plus, whatever you want to call it, then Meteor Lake might be a brand new architecture that could have no E-cores. It could be 3D stacked, whatever. It could be something completely different if they rehash the node. That's typically how Intel does it. I'm not saying that they have to do it that way, but if you look at how they typically build products and release them to the market and then iterate upon them, that is their style. That is typically their method of doing things. But AMD, I want to say, is less predictable than Intel because we have so many examples to look at over the years of how Intel does their releases. Whereas with AMD is definitely more dependent on TSMC. So when you try to predict what AMD is going to do, you have to also look at what TSMC is doing to figure out like what they can actually achieve. Not really. Well, okay, yeah. Zen 4 3D, yeah. Zen 4 3D. But you got to remember, like, Zen 5 is also coming in 2024. So both Meteor Lake and Zen 5 are going to come out in the same year. I don't know when they're going to come out, but they're going to come out in 2024. So basically, this year is going to be Zen 4 with the 3D versus Raptor Lake. Because the way I see it, Alder Lake is really more so what Zen 4 was supposed to compete against. See, a lot of people like to compare, and I know naturally we will compare them because of that's what's available. But in my opinion, when you look at 12th gen Intel, which is Alder Lake, that is actually who the Zen 4 CPUs are supposed to compete against. Because Zen 3 was supposed to compete against Rocket Lake, 11th gen. A lot of people like to compare Alder Lake with Ryzen 5000, but the thing is Ryzen 5000 was from 2020. Rocket Lake is supposed to be the proper competitor. So Intel double launched, they basically like stepped on top of themselves with Alder Lake, and that's why a lot of people ended up comparing Alder Lake with 5000 series. But Alder Lake is technically supposed to be the intended rival for Zen 4, not Raptor Lake. I think what Intel did was they launched Alder Lake so early because Rocket Lake was so bad that then they had this long runway to figure out when they want to put Raptor Lake out there. Because remember, Raptor Lake is nothing new. Raptor Lake is literally Alder Lake with faster and more E-cores. That's literally all it is. And a more mature 10 nanometer process so that the CPUs on Raptor Lake can clock a little bit higher than the Alder Lake ones. That's all it is. I don't think Zen 4 was late. I don't think it was late. Because it was within the 2-year window. Hey, Alon. Thanks for the sub. Man, we've been going pretty late. I may have to end the stream soon, but I mean, this is a good discussion in terms of like, since it is on the topic of CES and AMD just announced the 3D V-Cache CPUs. But I think in general, when you look at how Intel has kind of scrambled to put all these products out there in the market, the intended rival for Alder Lake is actually Zen 4. The intended rival for Raptor Lake, because Intel basically like squeezed everything together. So like 2021 was supposed to be Rocket Lake, 2022 was supposed to be Alder Lake, 2023 this year is the year of Raptor Lake. This is Raptor Lake's year, not last year. Last year was supposed to be 12th gen's year. So the fact that Zen 4, the non-X3Ds, came out last year, the intended competition for Zen 4 is Alder Lake. Intel screwed up the release windows and pushed everything all, kind of jumbled it all up together. So that's the reason why you end up with reviewers comparing Raptor Lake, because it got pushed up early, against what's available at the time. Obviously, that's going to be Zen 4. So that's the reason why Raptor Lake looks pretty good when you present it up against Zen 4, because Zen 4 was intended to compete with Alder Lake. So, and for all intents and purposes, Zen 4 beats Alder Lake. It has a better DDR5 memory controller. It usually wins in gaming. You go look at the 7700K or the 7700X and compare that to like the 13600K. Or not the 13600, the 12600K and the 12700K. So just look at those results and you can see. And then at the high end, the 7950X clearly defeats the 12900K, especially in multi-thread, because that thing, it's like 24 thread versus 32 thread. So the intended rival for Raptor Lake is actually going to be a processor from AMD that comes out this year, which is actually the Zen X3D, the Zen 4 X3D CPUs. So Zen 4 X3D is actually Raptor Lake's true rival. So now the stage is set. Now the fact that these X3D CPUs are coming out next month, now Raptor Lake will have to deal with its true competitor. Well, the thing is, see now, the only thing that Intel will launch this year, to basically to compete against the 3D, is going to be the KS chip. And the KS chip, we already know. Like, I can already tell right now, just from what AMD revealed today, the X3D will win in gaming, but will probably lose in multi-thread because it doesn't clock as high. The KS will win in multi-thread, which means that the KS will have an advantage in the typical productivity use case. But what remains to be seen is what is going to be the power consumption, because the power consumption on the 13900K is massive. So I can only imagine the KS will probably be the same. It'll probably use the exact same amount of power because it's literally just a golden sample 13900K, which means it's probably going to have the same power characteristics. It just clocks a little bit higher on its two best cores. They can reach 6 gigahertz and call it world's first 6 gigahertz processor. So that's what I expect to see from Intel. And that's not bad by any means. I'm not trying to bash on Intel. I think Intel's doing the best with what they have available. It's not like Intel's just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. They're actually putting stuff out there that is competitive with what AMD has. So, and it is forcing AMD to also compete at a very high level. And that's the really cool thing to see, because if you look back at, what we were talking about earlier, from 2012 all the way to 2017, there was basically nothing happening. Like Broadwell, Haswell, Ivy Bridge, Sandy Bridge, they were all basically the same thing. Skylake, Kaby Lake, Coffee Lake Plus, Lake, all basically the same thing. So you didn't really start seeing massive changes and swings in terms of Intel's winning, now AMD's winning, now Intel's winning, now AMD's winning. You didn't see that until, basically Zen came back. It was really Zen 2 in 2019 was where AMD finally closed the gap, and then in 2020 they basically took the performance crown. Yeah, and that's a good point. Intel can win outright through sheer volume sales. That is true. But really what I think ultimately makes Intel win isn't so much putting the CPU, like you and me going into a Micro Center or buying one of these off a Newegg. That's not really what makes Intel win. What makes Intel or AMD win is system integrators, OEMs like Dell, HP, Lenovo, actually winning, like basically getting the contracts to sell pre-builds, whether we're talking about gaming desktops, boutique system integrators like CyberPower PC or Main Gear, that's the way that Intel or AMD basically claws away at market share. Now, the fascinating thing about AMD's Ryzen story is the fact that AMD literally had nothing to go off of, and they literally took a grassroots approach, selling through enthusiasts with Zen 1, and then by word of mouth marketing, they kind of actually managed to claw back market share over the last 4 years. And then, as more people became aware of Zen's existence, that's what allowed Dell and HP to finally, pull the trigger and say, okay, let's go with these guys and start selling their CPUs in our products. And then especially on the mobile side is where it really, that's the really, really big wins. And that's the reason why, despite what we're saying about AMD being so great with the 3D V-Cache, ultimately at the end of the day, the fact that Intel can outship, they can just volume ship massive amounts of chips, mobile chips, desktop chips, high-end desktop chips, whatever. They can just outsell AMD by just flooding the market, like you said, like putting stuff on shelves. They can just put a bunch of laptops with Intel CPUs in them, just outsell AMD because they just have economies of scale, whereas AMD's biggest hurdle is the whole TSMC they're relying on TSMC. So that is the reason why Intel's vertical integration, despite the fact that Intel is stuck on 10 nanometer now, just like they were stuck on 14 nanometer, the fact that they're still able to manufacture their chips and they can control how much they build and then how much they sell, that gives them a lot more control in terms of being able to just win market share just because they have vertical integration. Stock wins unless no. Yep, that's true. I mean, that's part of the reason why I kind of feel like with RDNA 2 and the RTX 30 series, I really feel like the reason why NVIDIA managed to stay so relevant, the reason why I feel like NVIDIA, the needle never really shifted much throughout the whole RDNA 2 and RTX 30 series generation, is because of what we just talked about. Because during the last 2 years, or I guess now the last 3 years almost, well, the last 2 years, 2021, 2022, so during that time, it was very hard to get a 30 series NVIDIA card or an AMD RDNA 2 card, especially in 2021. Basically, that entire year is like the lost year of the PC enthusiast industry, because scalpers, bots, and cryptocurrency mining farms gobbled up all the graphics cards. And what surprised me was, despite the fact that you couldn't buy the graphics cards unless you paid crazy amounts of money, we're talking like $900 for an RTX 3060 Ti. That's how terrible it was. And that was when it was actually not at its worst. And people are complaining about, the price of the 7900 XT at $900, when literally a year ago you had to spend $900 to buy a 3060 Ti. And people were complaining about that. Apparently people forgot about that, or I guess they just ignored it completely. But the fact that so many people have 3060 Ti's tells me that a lot of people spent a ton of money. They overpaid on, mid-range graphics cards. So, I know people who play Star Citizen that spent over $900 on 3060 and 3060 Ti. Even though I told them not to do it, they still did it anyway, back in 2021. It's kind of embarrassing, not going to say any names, but I know who those people are, and yeah, they don't feel so good about their purchase, but they didn't really have any choice other than to just not buy anything. But I think the fact that NVIDIA was able to flood the market, even though all the crypto guys kept buying up all the cards, and the stories of like MSI selling direct, or just some AIBs selling direct to the mining farms. We all know the stories about that happening. The fact that you could that the needle never moved last generation is shocking, because it just tells me that NVIDIA was able to just outsell or outmanufacture RDNA 2. That's basically all it is. Because if you look at the previous crypto wave, so the crypto wave from 2017, that crypto wave, when you couldn't buy a Vega and you couldn't buy like anything, because that was when scalpers were taking them for mining. Back in that year, AMD, back in that time, AMD was the preferred GPU for mining Ethereum. Like back in 2017, people were mining using GTX 1070s, but they were mostly using AMD graphics cards. Like I'm talking like old AMD graphics cards, 7970, 390, 390X, 380, 280X, 280. These were the cards that people were mining. Vega also was kind of being used a lot, but it was expensive. So basically what you had in 2017 was NVIDIA was selling to gamers, and AMD was trying to sell to gamers, but actually in reality was being bought up by mining farms. So both AMD and NVIDIA were selling everything they had. The 580, the 570, the 480, the 470, those AMD cards were constantly bought up for mining purposes. So you had two demographics going to two different brands. You had gamers buying NVIDIA and you had miners buying AMD. But what happened in 2021? You had gamers wanting to buy NVIDIA like they normally do. And then you had miners also trying to buy NVIDIA RTX 30 series. They wanted to buy 3060 Ti's, 3070s, even 3080s. See, so what I thought would happen was, okay, now you can't buy an NVIDIA card because both demographics are going for the same product. So I thought, okay, that means it'll be easy to buy an RDNA 2 graphics card. But it wasn't easy because we had the supply shortages. so AMD wasn't manufacturing. They weren't manufacturing enough of them. So because NVIDIA only makes graphics cards, so when NVIDIA establishes the contract for manufacturing with TSMC, it's 100% GPUs. Whereas AMD, it's like, oh, we got to pick and choose. Do we want to build more Ryzen or do we want to build GPUs? Like, which one's going to be an easier sell? So they had to prioritize one over the other, and that's the reason why RDNA 2 was hard to get. Yeah, 7 nanometer was high demand. So, and then you have Apple showing up to TSMC. It's like, hey, build our iPhones, build those M1s. So that just made the whole shortage even worse. I mean, obviously the whole shutdown for like a month, which caused the whole supply chain to slow down, and then the whole lockdown, all that stuff. So we all know how that played out. That was, yeah, those were the dark times. So hopefully we've kind of moved beyond that, and we don't have the same problem that plagued the industry for the last 2 years. And it only somewhat fixed itself in the second half of last year. But that's a really good point, though. That Felipe is bringing up a really good point. That being able to volume sell, just push massive amounts of your product into the market and hope that it sells itself. That is one strategy, and that really does work when the supply is constricted. Oh, it's going to come back. It always does. It comes in cycles. All you gotta do is like think about the waves. It comes in waves. It's gonna come back, guaranteed. It's gonna come back. It always rears its ugly head like every 2 years. So what was the first one? 2014. We had the 2014 crypto wave. That was back when Litecoin was a thing. That was when people were mining with R9 290X and 290 and the 280 and maybe the 780 Ti, but not really because those weren't actually good at compute. Then you had the 2017 wave. You had the 2017 wave. Then obviously you had the 2020 and 2021 wave. So it usually comes back like every 2 years or 2 to 3 years. See, like look at that. That's the trend. See, 2014 wave, 2017 wave, 2020 wave. Oh wait, I shouldn't say anything because 2023 is this year. So it's supposed to. Well, okay, you got to look at when it crashed. So it crashed at the very end. I forget this one, but 2017 it crashed. It like ran up and then like crashed at the start of 2018, and then it kind of like was kind of in a bear market, and then the whole pandemic hit, and it was kind of like this, and then it started doing this crazy stuff, and then we all know what happened in 2022. Ethereum went proof of stake, and that just kind of killed it off. So here we are now at the start of this year. So who knows what's going to happen? Because it was kind of up here too in this time, and then it kind of went down, and then it kind of went up like that. So it comes in waves. So I think we're good. Like it's going to come back. You got to think of when it crashed. 2018 is when it crashed. 2022 is when it crashed. So that's like what, a 4-year block. So the ramp up starts 2 years out. So 2018 it crashed. 2020 it started. So basically 2 years in 2022. So 2024. 2024 is when you'll see it make its triumphant return. So I'm just going to go ahead and predict that here. We'll see if I end up being correct. But I just use logical analysis. I just look at, like, you know, the trends in history, and that's how I figure out what it's going to do. So we don't have to worry about this year. So the good news is if you want to buy a GPU, this year is going to be an easy year to buy a GPU. Unless we get supply shortages or another pandemic happens and another lockdown happens, you know, there shouldn't be any problems from cryptocurrency, at least for this year. But, you know, sometime in 2024, crypto's probably going to make its triumphant return. Yeah, but I don't know what AI is going to do. AI wouldn't cause a supply shortage, though. That'll just be another metric, another bean counter for, like, who the product's being sold to. But yeah, that's the crypto market in a nutshell. So we don't have to worry this year. It's going to be a bear market this year. Next year, I think, is when it'll come back. There's going to be Bitcoin, probably Solana, and some other altcoins, or someone's going to come up with some whatever, and they're going to try to push that as the new Ethereum, or maybe Ethereum Classic decides to take off for whatever reason. But it has to build up marketing hype behind it for the people that support various cryptos, and then get more buy-in, and then, you know, that's eventually what causes people to look at crypto again, and they start buying crypto again, and that's what's going to push the market back up. But it will ultimately depend on whether or not GPU mining becomes profitable. That's ultimately what it's going to boil down to. So the next one, oh, we did get another, did we get another sub? I know Alan subbed earlier. There was another sub too that I forgot. Shukai had subbed an hour ago. Jeeves had subbed 3 hours ago. So thanks for the subs if you're still watching. I appreciate it. But anyway, guys, I think that's probably going to be it. We kind of saw the big reveal. So yeah, this year is going to be an interesting one, especially if you're somebody who doesn't buy, like, very expensive GPUs, because all the flagship GPUs have already launched. So everything that comes out this year, most of it, unless there's a 4080 Ti, which there might be in the second half of the year, probably around like September, there might be a 4080 Ti based off of NVIDIA's historical, like, launches. Maybe early next year though, but we'll see. I think that in terms of CPUs, the Zen 3D CPUs are going to come out. They're probably going to be the best ones overall. In gaming, they're going to win. I think Intel 13th Gen Raptor Lake is still going to be competitive against them in productivity workloads. That's where the E-cores really shine. So yeah, it's not like X3D comes out and then Intel's just dead. No, I don't think that's how it works. We talked about how Intel volume sells, or they ship so much product, so they're still able to outsell AMD. So Intel's still going to be a very fierce competitor. But I do think in the enthusiast circle, AMD is definitely going to be the way to go, especially if you want an all-rounder CPU. I do think that the 7950X3D is probably going to be the best all-rounder CPU, because it's probably going to be the best gaming CPU, and it's also probably going to be the best productivity CPU overall, because it's probably going to win on power consumption efficiency. So that means less heat, less noise, lower electricity bill, while still giving you the best gaming performance, while still giving you very, very good productivity performance. So I think that's going to be probably best CPU of the year. But we don't know yet what Intel's going to do. I know Intel announced their entire generic 13th gen CPUs. So anything that doesn't have a K, they announced it today. And some of them, at the lower end, like the i3s, are just rehashes of Alder Lake, with a 13 instead of a 12. So, you know, more like affordable options, I'll say, is what I'm noticing is the trend for this year. But I guess for the enthusiasts, you know, the X3D, it's either going to be like X3D and take your pick. Do you want an 8-core, a 12-core, or a 16-core? And then I guess from the Intel, obviously there's going to be the KS, but that's kind of a meme part. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. And then for graphics cards, obviously 4070 Ti launched, and it basically bombed hard in all the reviews. I watched pretty much every single review that I saw on 4070 Ti, and it was basically torn apart by reviewers, by large, which I guess NVIDIA sort of deserves it. Although, I don't know, the market has gotten really, really messed up just in general in the graphics card world. I don't know who to blame. I don't know if NVIDIA is who to blame, or if crypto and supply shortages, which drove the price up of graphics cards, if that's to blame. I don't know. It's maybe all of the above. But graphics cards right now are probably just the most frustrating component to evaluate right now. But I do think we're going to see everything that's like lower performing than a 7900 XT is going to launch this year. So like 4070 Ti, 4070, 4060, the Radeon 7800 stuff is going to come out. The 7700 stuff is going to come out. Probably March, April will be the 7800. And then the 7700 will probably be in the summer, probably June or July, or maybe August if I had to guess. But that's kind of what I expect from AMD on the graphics card side. So with that said, I don't know. I'm pretty hyped that the 3D Vcache stuff is coming out so early. I did not expect it. I expected the 8-core 7800X 3D to launch around like April, May. And then the double CCD ones, I thought they were going to come out later, like maybe August or July. But I'm surprised that they're coming out so early. But that's really interesting. So it does mean that most of this year is probably going to be boring because there's not a whole lot to look forward to unless you're someone who's wanting to upgrade to a mid-range GPU or like a high performance, like a 7800 XT, for example. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to talk about. So you pretty much covered it. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. Once again, thanks for watching. And those who subscribed, welcome to the channel. Hope you guys get some value out of the content that's on here. If you're interested in things like PC DIY, hardware reviews, overclocking, even gaming, we do cover gaming from now. Every so often I do live streams where I do gameplay streams. And we're going to talk about some of the upcoming games that come out in Q1 in a future stream. So if you're interested in any of that, you know, feel free to subscribe and hit that bell icon. It does help me out. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.